immediately sprang into action. They lifted a large medical pod from the corner. After quickly filling with a green liquid, the female robot was placed inside. The temperature of the green liquid seemed very low, and wisps of white smoke were rising from its surface. The body temperature was dropping, and the internal temperature was stabilizing. Current transmission progress, 97. The connector originally used for injecting and draining nutrient solution in the medical chamber was replaced with a transparent tube, through which the green liquid was slowly flowing. Current transmission progress, 99. It seemed that success was near, and the mechanical voice sounded lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. If only everything could be so perfect. Warning, warning, the body temperature is rising again, reaching 42 degrees Celsius. Immediately activate the Level B emergency plan. The female robot lying in the medical chamber began to tremble more violently. It seemed that the green liquid had completely lost its cooling properties. The green liquid was rapidly drained, and something else seemed to be injected. It was unclear what was happening, but a thick white mist began to rise in the medical chamber. The body temperature returned to normal. Transmission progress, 999. It appeared that ample preparations had been made, and only 01 remained. It should be over soon. 5 minutes passed. Transmission error. Unknown data stream cannot be transmitted. Repeat. Did Nova stop the transmission? Repeat. No response. The substitute kept repeating. The base fell into silence. Dongfang felt as if a long time had passed, yet it also felt like just a moment. He found himself in a grand hall. Another grand hall that looked exactly like the one he had entered through the light gate. But Dongfang knew this was definitely not the same building. The ground still had a square mat, with 2 hand-shaped depressions in front of it. Instinctively, Dongfang shrank his hands. However, this time he had learned his lesson. He didn't dare to press the handprint. He also didn't look up at the idol on the offering platform. Instead, he turned around to look behind him. In the center of the hall floated a blue orb of light. However, it was very quiet, showing no signs of aggression. The doors of the hall were closed, making the lighting somewhat dim. It was hard to see further away. Dongfang felt a chill in his heart, recalling Nova's earlier instructions. He pressed a button on his belt buckle. Liquid metal flowed out from the belt, quickly enveloping his entire body. Eventually, the liquid metal solidified, forming a set of powered exoskeleton armor. Once the visor came down, Dongfang was completely covered. Surrounded tightly, he felt a sense of security. However, he still didn't dare to move. Instead, he called upon his most powerful assistant in his mind. Nova, are you there? After repeatedly calling for Nova with no response, Dongfang even shouted out loud. For a long time, he had been accustomed to having Nova by his side at all times. Suddenly receiving no reply made him anxious. Fearing an attack from the blue orb, he didn't dare to move. It seemed that calling for Nova's help was the only thing he could do right now. Dongfang turned around and looked once more at the idol on the offering platform. Xiao Nuo, please analyze the statues in front of us. Okay, Master, please wait a moment. Fortunately, the biological computer is still functioning normally. Master, please do not focus your attention on the head of the middle statue. It is emitting a low-frequency wave, with a frequency of about 48 Hz. The light you see is actually unstable. It is flickering at a specific frequency. However, it deceives your eyes, making you feel it is somewhat glaring and continuously bright. Xiao Nuo, what should I do? I'm sorry, Master, but Xiao Nuo cannot answer your question. You need to decide for yourself. Dongfang fell silent, unsure of what else to do. He couldn't move faster than a laser. Perhaps today would be his last. Chapter 118. The human figurine Dongfang gritted his teeth and released his hands from the mech. He pressed down once again on the indentation in front of the mat. This was the only method he could think of at the moment. A dazzling blue light was still emanating from his palm. It seemed the Maya really liked blue, as evidenced by the paint on the buildings and the strange blue tiny channels. Unfortunately, the blue light portal did not appear. However, the offering platform in front of Dongfang emitted a grinding sound. It actually split in half. The mat beneath his feet also separated. A downward passage appeared under Dongfang's feet. Flames revealed themselves beneath the mech's feet. Dongfang pushed off the ground with force and dove into the passage. At the moment he entered the passage, he turned his head to look back. The blue light sphere showed no reaction and remained quietly suspended in the center of the hall. It seemed that this light sphere would not attack humans. Dongfang concluded, but unfortunately, he had already rushed into the passage, moving too fast to turn back for now. He extended his hand, and flames erupted from the nozzle in his palm. His speed immediately slowed down. Dongfang landed on the steps. As soon as his feet touched the stone of the steps, orange light illuminated the surrounding walls, brightening the passage exceptionally. Thus, Dongfang saw that at the end of the passage was a closed metal door, about 3 meters high and 25 meters wide. It was made of a single piece of metal, adorned with murals. In the center of the door, a palm-shaped indentation appeared. Dongfang did not want to take any risks. He turned around and walked back. At the exit, Dongfang removed his diving suit. He reached out and raised his hand towards the passage, ready to let go if the light sphere shot out a laser. However, as he had predicted, the light sphere did not attack. Dongfang cautiously stepped out of the passage, and the light sphere remained unchanged. This time, he finally felt relieved. But just as he stepped out of the passage, the grinding sound echoed again behind him. The passage closed automatically. Dongfang stepped on the area above the passage. It was tightly sealed with no abnormalities. Forget it, everything here seems strange. It's better to go outside and take a look. With that thought, Dongfang bypassed the central light sphere and walked towards the entrance of the hall. There was no door. All around were walls. The scanning devices of the mech also found nothing. No buttons or light bases that are often pressed by people. Nothing at all. The individual even climbed onto the altar, but still found nothing. It seems that the underground passage is the only way out. With this final conclusion, the individual had no other thoughts and reopened the entrance to the underground passage, following the steps directly to the metal door. They reached out and placed their palm on the hand-shaped indentation on the door. As expected, once the hand made contact with the metal door, a blinding blue light emerged. The metal door rose upwards. The individual was taken aback. Inside, it was brightly lit, filled with various strange instruments. There were metal circular platforms, metal blocks, metal discs, and other items. In the center, there was a flying device, resembling the one depicted in the restored mural by Nova. The individual carefully observed all the items inside through the open metal door. It seemed there was no danger, so they stepped inside. They walked slowly, while scanning the spaces on both sides of the door. This was a place that could not be seen from outside. Many colorful humanoid figures, specifically vividly colored figurines holding metal spears. All of them wore blue-painted masks. Above the edge of the masks, many feather-like items were inserted. Through the gaps in the feathers, several small braids could be seen, resembling the dreadlocks that are currently popular among some groups. Just as the individual was closely examining the humanoid figure on the right, a blue light suddenly flashed from the eyes of a figurine on the left. It was so quick that it seemed like an illusion. Then, the eyes of 20 figurines on the left emitted the same blue light. 34 Bo. Hey ya, SA? Strange humans. 34 The individual heard an odd voice. Not good. In an instant, without even looking back, they pushed off the ground with force and leaped upwards. They jumped to the top of the underground space. Then a sound reached their ears. It was a metal spear, firmly embedded in the metal wall, with the spear shaft violently shaking up and down. The figurines had come to life. The metal spear had been thrown by the leading humanoid figure. Damn! The individual shouted, cold sweat breaking out on their back. Such immense power. If it hit the mech's protective shield, would likely drain a small portion of energy immediately. Looking down, they saw that 12 humanoid figures were slowly starting to move. They became more agile after moving their limbs. They made creaking sounds, like rusty metal grinding against each other, which was extremely sharp and piercing. There was no time to wait. Out of nowhere, strike when they are unprepared. After this thought flashed through their mind, they pushed off from the rooftop. In a flash, they appeared above the humanoid figure that had thrown the spear. Mech Combat Manual D, Mech Axe Style. The figure from the east struck down like an axe towards the head of the humanoid figure. A flash of blue light flickered on the humanoid's body, followed by a clang. The figure from the east's foot broke through the defense and smashed into the humanoid's head. The humanoid's neck was crushed into its chest cavity, and with another flash of blue light in its eyes, it stood still. Just as the figure from the east landed, a shadow flashed before him, and another spear was thrust towards him. It was the moment when old strength was exhausted and new strength had yet to emerge. With no choice, the figure from the east could only brace himself. Warning: under attack. Pressure on the impact point exceeds 5 tons. Energy consumption is massive. Current shield energy remaining is 85. The small nuclear fusion engine is recharging. Please be cautious and avoid. The figure from the east was sent flying. Because the energy shield automatically disperses the force, it felt as if he had been hit by a car, flying backwards. At the same time, 3 more spears were coming towards him from the front. The figure from the east immediately activated the boost device and ascended rapidly. The spears passed just under 1 centimeter beneath his feet. That was close. He quickly increased the power of the boost device, leaping over several humanoids, appearing behind them. Then he drew out a high-frequency pulse dagger and charged forward. The best defense is offense. This was something Master Arthur had emphasized repeatedly in combat class. So he had to attack. Initially, he gained overwhelming advantages. As several humanoids were not very agile, he easily severed their necks. Wires were exposed. Blue sparks erupted. It turned out that all these humanoids were robots. But soon he found himself in a tough battle. There were too many humanoids. Of the 30 humanoids stationed in the hall, 25 had regained movement. Aside from the 5 that had been knocked down earlier, 20 charged towards the figure from the east. Over 20 spears lunged at him. After cutting through 5 with his dagger, he could not continue. The other spears had already pierced through the mech's energy shield and stabbed into the powered armor. The powered armor was known for its agility, but its defense was slightly weaker. Although it did not break through, the immense force sent the figure from the east flying backwards. A sweetness filled his mouth as he spat out a mouthful of blood. His internal organs were injured. Gritting his teeth against the excruciating pain, he stood up and threw the dagger, piercing the chest of a humanoid. Then he turned and lunged towards the metal door, collapsing onto the steps of the corridor. After climbing the steps, the figure from the east used all fours to scramble into the main hall. Once the ground closed behind him, he crouched on the mat, staring intently ahead to see if any humanoids would follow. Fortunately, there was no change in the ground. The figure from the east let out a long breath, temporarily safe. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his chest, causing him to weaken and fall to the ground. The helmet automatically retracted, and the blood that spilled flowed down his neck to the floor. His face was filled with anguish. Bloodstains still lingering at the corners of his mouth, and his brows furrowed tightly. He felt an unusual tightness in his chest, as if a heavy stone was pressing down on him. His body curled up as he began to cough violently, eventually spitting out a mouthful of blood. The tightness in his chest gradually subsided. He struggled to reach for a medical capsule from his belt, popping it into his mouth and swallowing it down with the blood. The repair speed of the ultra-micro nanobots was impressive. The intense pain in his chest slowly disappeared, and his body began to relax. However, soon he felt a rumbling in his abdomen. Damn, did I bring any food? After wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, he muttered in frustration. He didn't want to get up, fully relaxing his body and stretching out on the ground. Surprisingly, this experience had left him feeling unusually at ease. And he dozed off. Nova, data transmission error, should we stop? The main control computer at the underwater base tirelessly repeated its inquiry. 2 hours later, a blinding blue light surged through the data transmission cable and into the helmet. Then the production workshop went dark. Warning, abnormal current has breached the circuit. The facility has temporarily lost power. The main control computer issued another alert. Meanwhile, 2 glowing orbs appeared in the darkness at the location of the medical capsule. Did I succeed? A pleasant and familiar female voice sounded from the direction of the lights. Welcome back, Nova. As soon as the main control computer finished speaking, the lights on the ceiling began to illuminate one by one. Is this what it feels like to be human? The female robot stepped out of the medical capsule and jumped down from the assembly platform. As she moved, liquid metal began to flow, ultimately transforming into a form familiar to him. Nova, you can go when you want. You can stop when you want. What a wonderful feeling to be in control. Hee. Nova kept walking back and forth, occasionally bouncing on the spot. Oh no, I forgot the most important thing. She immediately ran outside, her long legs leaving behind a blur. A shuttle was already parked outside the facility, and Nova waved as she ran. The hatch opened immediately, and she leaped inside. Then, the hatch closed, and the shuttle flew out of the base, heading straight into the nearby starship. With a whoosh, the starship vanished from sight. Oriental shifted slightly in the hall. It seemed the ground was too hard. He shook his head and changed to a side-sleeping position. His face made close contact with the ground. The cold sensation jolted him awake. He sprang up, crouching on the mat and looking around. There were no changes in the hall, only the glowing orb in the center emitting a faint blue light. It seemed that, like the orb, they all had their own alert zones. He sat cross-legged, resting his chin on his hands, pondering how to deal with a group of robots. Kite tactics? No way. Those long spears they wielded were no joke. Taking them out one by one. Also not feasible, as these robots would swarm at the slightest movement. The incident was sudden, and there was too little information. More reconnaissance was needed. The eastern figure stood up again, pressing down on the indentation once more. A piercing blue light illuminated the surroundings. The waters off the coast of a certain region suddenly became tumultuous, with towering waves crashing. Yet, there was no wind. Beneath the depths of 1,000 meters, a starship swiftly glided by. Nova had arrived. Soon, the starship reached the skies above an underwater city. A thick green beam shot out from the top of the starship, enveloping the temple within it. This temple, Nova noted, had an outer layer that was not naturally formed. Its source was in the tallest building at the center. Nova nodded, as she was already aware of the relevant data. Let us take action. The starship's protective shield began to expand outward, displacing all the seawater around the temple. Then, a blue perspective beam shot out from the top. The internal structures of all buildings within the temple's high walls appeared in the starship's holographic image. As the blue light swept across, the conditions within other buildings became clear. There were no abnormalities. Until the beam reached a terrace structure, Nova finally made a discovery. At the center of the building, 100 meters below where the grand hall had disappeared to the east, there was another space. It had a slanted passage leading down to another area. Above this space was an open area in the center of the courtyard. Found you, Nova exclaimed, as she spotted a moving human figure. He was piloting a flying device, heading towards the ground. At that moment, the open area in the courtyard split apart. and the flying device shot out, aiming straight up. Even after being blocked by the starship's protective shield, it continued to spew black smoke, trying to escape. Seeing this, Nova immediately flew to the side of the flying device, accompanied by 5-star mechs. Inside the transparent cockpit, Nova saw the Eastern figure, dressed in tattered power armor. He looked somewhat flustered. The star mech extended a large hand, grasping the flying device. With the other hand, it pinched the cockpit and, with a gentle flick of 2 fingers, sent the outer shell flying off. Run! As the cockpit opened, the Eastern figure immediately leaped into the star mech's hand, shouting, "It's going to blow." No sooner had he finished speaking than the ground of the temple began to shake and crack open. Faint blue light seeped through. Before Nova could respond, an overwhelming blue light engulfed them all. Inside the temple, no complete structures could be seen. Massive amounts of seawater rushed in, suppressing the dust raised by the explosion. The temple fell silent once more. The spot where the Eastern figure had burst out transformed into a vast deep pit, faintly glowing red. The seawater churned violently, revealing the magma below due to the explosion damaging the crust. "Hey, Nova, how did you get a body? And come here." The astonished voice of the Eastern figure rang out. How was he unharmed? Above the temple, below the starship, several figures stood within the energy protective shield. One of them was reaching out, feeling the other person. "So soft, so real. It is much softer than mine," saying that he pinched his own arm. Chapter 120, Destruction of the Dolls. "Your Excellency, you can't treat your loyal subordinate like this. Although I am a machine, I shouldn't be touched like this." The one doing the touching is Dongfang, and naturally, the one being touched is Nova. Dongfang retracted his hand, chuckling. Why haven't they suffered any harm? It turns out that at the very moment before the explosion, the starship's shield timely enveloped Dongfang, Nova, the starry mech, and the small spacecraft piloted by Dongfang. Such intensity of explosion was nothing for the starship. "Your Excellency, I'm very worried. How did you manage to escape?" The assisting mech also looks quite battered. "Did it encounter some danger?" "You have no idea. I arrived at a place similar to the Grand Hall above." Dongfang raised an eyebrow. Just as he was about to recount his heroic deeds, a gurgle came from his abdomen, and it was particularly loud. I'm so hungry. Let us eat something first." Dongfang's face fell. He had been hungry for a long time. The micro-nano robots consumed a lot of energy while repairing his internal organs. After that intense battle, it was no wonder he was starving. In the starship's restaurant, Dongfang was sitting in his familiar spot, continuously stuffing food into his mouth. Lobster, king crab, grilled giant squid. In a starship cruising through the sea, these delicacies were naturally abundant. Nova quietly sat beside him, constantly refilling Dongfang's cup with drinks. "Your Excellency, please eat slower. There is plenty of food." Nova's voice was incredibly gentle, seeming to become more human-like after the electronic life had changed its shell. This made Dongfang glance sideways at her. However, it seemed that the delicious food on the table attracted him even more, so while observing Nova, he still didn't forget to keep stuffing food into his mouth. Half an hour later, Dongfang swallowed the last piece of crab meat. Satisfied, he leaned back and slumped into his chair. "Nova, your cooking skills have greatly improved. I'm glad you like it." Nova continued to sit quietly beside him, calm and unhurried, resembling a refined lady, as if she could wait until the end of time. "Wow, truly beautiful," Dongfang exclaimed, sitting up straight. "When I was teleported, let us just call it teleportation for now." His thoughts were pulled back to a few hours ago. The ground cracked open once more. 6 humanoid dolls lay sprawled on the steps, still sparking. "I'll crush you." Dongfang grinned, kicking one of the dolls at his feet. There was no reaction. It had indeed been completely destroyed. Confirming there was no danger, Dongfang crouched down to carefully observe the various components exposed on the humanoid doll. In fact, the structure of these dolls was quite simple. They were just skeleton-like robots covered with a thin layer of iron shell. The robot's power core was placed where the heart would be, which was also why Dongfang had previously thrown a dagger to destroy one. The iron shell was painted with various colors, matching the style of the surrounding architecture. It was obvious that these were humanoid robots made by the Maya. But why are there only a few left here? Filled with confusion, Dongfang bypassed the remains of the humanoid figure located in the center of the steps and carefully walked down from the side near the wall. The humanoid figures that had just been moving returned to their original formation. However, with 11 figures missing, the lineup looked uneven and lacked its former momentum. 1 was damaged by a dagger, 6 were left in the passage, and 5 were previously damaged during the assault. Out of the 25 humanoid figures that could operate normally, only 13 remained. However, the high-frequency pulse dagger had already been thrown away, leaving only a small energy gun in hand. It was uncertain whether it could penetrate the seemingly thin iron shell of the humanoid figures. No matter, let us give it a try. Worst case, he could crawl back to the main hall. Dongfang peeked out from the metal door and aimed at the chest of a humanoid figure that was not holding a spear. It had just been the first to throw its spear. A dazzling orb of light shot out from the gun's muzzle. A black hole appeared in the chest of the humanoid figure, and it fell to the ground with a thud. Great, it worked. Dongfang was excited and raised his hand to fire again. The remaining 10 humanoid figures noticed the anomaly, their eyes glowing red, and charged straight towards Dongfang at the door. They also threw their spears. Fortunately, Dongfang was prepared and jumped aside. All the spears landed on the steps from earlier. Exposing his arm, he continued to shoot. In the brief moment while the humanoid figures rushed to the door, Dongfang took down 6 of them. However, the remaining 4 had already reached the door. This was just what Dongfang wanted. The space in the main hall was larger, more suitable for him to maneuver. Dealing with those unintelligent robots was a piece of cake. Unfortunately, the remaining few robots moved faster than Dongfang had anticipated. They charged forward and were right in front of him, swinging their arms towards his face. Damn, they can accelerate. Dongfang rolled to the side to dodge. As he avoided, he turned back to see a fist that couldn't be retracted in time smash into the walls on either side of the passage. Sparks flew, and a fist-sized chunk of stone fell. So hard. Perhaps due to the attack, the passage made a crunching sound and began to contract inward. It was too late for Dongfang to return to the main hall. He couldn't think about that anymore. He leaped forward into the metal door, narrowly avoiding the 2 spears that lunged at him. However, the whooshing sound of the spears made his scalp tingle. Just as he crouched down, a shadow appeared in his peripheral vision. The 4th robot was stepping back. Damn! Using all his strength, Dongfang rolled to the side again, narrowly avoiding a fatal blow. But the energy gun was left behind. Then the nozzle in his palm lit up, and Dongfang stood up. 2 spears came stabbing at him again. He crouched down and swept his leg, knocking the 2 robots in front of him to the ground. Their legs twisted abnormally, unable to stand again. Only 2 left. Dongfang's eyes sparkled with excitement. He clenched his fists and lunged at the mecha. Hand-to-hand combat. The sound of pinging and pounding echoed in the underground space. After all, the robot's speed was quite fast, so rather than exhausting himself trying to dodge, it was better to confront it head-on. The Eastern fighter threw a left hook, striking the robot in front of him on the head, causing its metal shell to dent and one of its red eyes to turn black instantly. However, another robot had circled around behind him. A punch landed on his back. The Eastern fighter let out a cry, raising his hands to block the 2 arms coming at him. Leaning forward, he seized the robot's head, and with a forceful tug, he swapped positions with the robot. The robot behind him punched the back of the humanoid figure standing in front of the Eastern fighter. The metal shell cracked open, and the punch broke the humanoid's metal spine. The Eastern fighter felt a heaviness in his hands as the robot pulled him off balance. The last remaining robot would not miss this opportunity, retracting its arm and lunging at the Eastern fighter. The 2 fell to the ground and began to grapple. In the end, the Eastern fighter tore off the humanoid's metal shell, while the humanoid removed the exterior armor from the robot's chest. At this moment, the robot spotted an opening in the Eastern fighter's defense, its red eye glinting as it reached out to jab at the Eastern fighter's chest. The Eastern fighter also saw his chance, raising his foot to kick the robot's chest. His foot reached first, as it was longer. Therefore, the Eastern fighter won. He kicked and damaged the robot's power core. The mechanical hand was less than 5 centimeters from the Eastern fighter's chest. Damn! The Eastern fighter spat, got up, and finished off the 2 disabled robots. Next came the time to reap the rewards, he thought happily, walking towards the aircraft in the middle of the hall. Chapter 121. Escape. This was a single-person aircraft, so it was relatively small in size. It was about 10 meters long and less than 4 meters wide at its widest point. It closely resembled the one in the mural, with 4 sturdy nozzles located on the sides and the tail. The cockpit was quite small, emitting a charming metallic sheen. The transparent cockpit cover was open, connected by a short ladder. It seemed that the Maya people were relatively short, so the Eastern fighter only needed to climb 2 rungs to lean into the cockpit. The Maya appeared to have an unusual obsession with triangles, as the dashboard inside the cockpit was predominantly triangular, including the function buttons. However, since the spacecraft was not powered on, the instruments were all in a black screen state. The strange symbols on the dashboard were completely unfamiliar to the Eastern fighter. He jumped down and circled the aircraft to determine if the spacecraft could still operate normally. Soon, he discovered a strange groove on the underside of the aircraft. In fact, the spacecraft was not directly resting on the ground. It was floating in the air, just at a very small distance, creating an illusion that it was sitting on the ground. That strange groove was where it barely touched the surface, continuously transporting a blue substance to the belly of the spacecraft. It seemed that the spacecraft was still operational. The Eastern fighter got up from the ground, brushed off the dust from his hands, and walked towards the metallic circular platform. On the edge of the platform, a palm-shaped indentation appeared. There was also a blue triangular button. Dongfang hesitated about what to do, hoping not to be teleported again. So he walked towards a row of square metal platforms placed against the wall. This time, there was finally something different. The first metal platform near the metal door had only a triangular button at the corner. Dongfang already had psychological shadows from the palm-shaped indentation, but he hadn't tried pressing the button yet. Gritting his teeth, he pressed the palm-sized button. A flash of blue light illuminated the entire row of metal platforms. Above each metal platform, a floating display screen lit up. Some displayed the three-dimensional structure of a spacecraft, while others showed rows of strange characters. One screen even displayed several humanoid figures standing on the ground. Of course, 2 platforms were completely unresponsive, seemingly damaged from age. After scanning the area, Dongfang noticed that the circular metal platform in the center also began to operate normally. A fuzzy spherical light shadow appeared. Dongfang immediately rushed over, hoping it wasn't another warning orb. Just as he reached the side of the circular platform, the light sphere flickered and became clearer. Dongfang was stunned because the light sphere was not blinding, but rather exceptionally beautiful. The light sphere transformed into a complete view of the blue planet. Moreover, it was slowly rotating and revolving. Upon closer inspection, it was identical to the global map published by the blue planet, with no discrepancies. He could even see the lights of human cities on the hemisphere facing away from the sun. Dongfang stared at it, until the flickering red dot appeared in front of him for the 3rd time. Dongfang instinctively reached out a finger to poke it. The image quickly zoomed in, the camera continuously pulling closer into the blue planet, until the entire temple came into view. Every detail was visible without any omissions, and Dongfang even saw the symbol on the robotic arm entering the temple. This was incredible. This was a real-time global observation system from 2,500 years ago. The Mayans were definitely not the indigenous people of Earth. This was solid proof. The spacecraft depicted in the murals could also be explained now. Dongfang felt relieved. This was undoubtedly the control center of the entire temple. He boldly reached out to touch the floating 3D image. He could look wherever he wanted. Everything was satisfactory. However, it seemed to have reached the system's limit, and he could no longer zoom in further. After a while, Dongfang withdrew his hand. Having used a more advanced real-time observation system on a starship, he quickly grasped the functionalities of this observation system. This image could only be used for observation, with no other functions, which was rather dull. So, Dongfang turned his gaze back to the palm-shaped indentation. Did he need higher permissions to control the entire temple? He could only try it out. Being stuck here would only lead to starvation. With a determined mind, Dongfang pressed down again. The familiar blue light emerged, and indeed, a larger screen floated above the circular platform. All the information from the temple was displayed on it. Dongfang saw his own position. Beneath the temple courtyard, there was a circular passage above the round platform. However, he didn't dare to press anything randomly since he didn't recognize the symbols. His brain was racing, analyzing the specific meanings of the symbols on the screen. They seemed to be related to direction, as the rotating blue star continuously lit up below. It appeared to represent the opening of a portal, as there was a similar symbol beneath both large halls. It seemed to indicate direction control, undoubtedly representing a flying device. There was much to analyze, but he didn't have the time. Since it represented a flying device, he decided to give it a try. He was already impatient, wanting to summon the army of robots. Then he could take whatever he wanted. He reached out and pressed on the symbol. With a buzzing sound, the flying device floated up. The center of the circular metal platform instantly cracked open, and a metal block floated out, seemingly preset. As long as the flying device was activated, the metal block would drift out. Without thinking further, he picked up the nearby metal block and quickly walked to the side of the flying device. The metal block above him had silently moved aside, revealing a part of the passage. Just as he sat down, the transparent cockpit cover automatically closed. He awkwardly curled up inside. Those Maya dwarfs. They designed a cockpit so small. He muttered to himself and reached out to prepare to control the flying device. Unfortunately, 2 safety belts automatically extended from the seat, pulling him back. He almost touched the lever on the dashboard. Before he could make another move, the flying device stood upright on its own, with the gen toe facing up, and the tail emitted a loud roar. He realized that the flying device didn't need manual control. The program had been preset, so he stopped moving and sat steadily, waiting to go out. The flying device slowly floated up, leisurely heading towards the passage. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed, and he turned his head with difficulty to look at the ground. His pupils shrank. Cracks began to appear on the ground. A faint blue light was shining through. The display screen of the flying device also showed a series of characters, and at the bottom, a row of dots started to appear. At first, he thought it was an ellipsis, but as the flying device accelerated, the dots decreased one by one. He understood it was a countdown. Just when there were 6 dots left, the flying device shot out of the passage. The cracks on the ground quickly closed up, but he had already noticed that the ground began to shake. Then he saw Nova at the edge of the passage. Anxious, he shouted that they were going to explode. Run. Unfortunately, the cockpit was too small. He couldn't make any movements, and his voice didn't carry at all. Chapter 122. Harvest. What followed was the scene you just witnessed. He shrugged his shoulders and gave a wry smile to Nova, who was staring at him with wide eyes. Aside from the metal block and the flying device, it seemed there was nothing else to gain. It's okay, as long as you're fine, everything else is not a problem. Nova smiled and stretched out her delicate hand. Is this the metal block? I think this is your harvest. The one that jumped out earlier was thrown into the cockpit of the aircraft in a hurry. Dongfang took a sip of water. Having talked for a long time and feeling thirsty, Nova nodded, remained silent, and walked to the door of the dining area. The hatch opened, and a robot handed in a metal block that resembled a brick. Is this it, Captain? Dongfang lifted his eyelids, took a lazy glance, and nodded slightly. Of course. The metal block was extremely special, covered with blue patterns that formed the shape of a lotus flower. The center of the flower was right at the core of the metal block. Nova frowned slightly. Another origin of all things? This seemed to represent two completely different technological systems from the Blue Star and the Ring Star. Those patterns not only seemed to transmit energy, but also appeared capable of conveying information. She retrieved the results of the starship's extensive scan of the temple. There were no power generation devices in the temple at all. But what was its energy source? Relying solely on a metal slab seemed insufficient for further research. Captain, are you interested in checking out that aircraft? Nova tilted her head, revealing a charming smile. She is a robot. She is a robot. Dongfang reminded himself 3 times in his mind. Then, feigning calm, he nodded. Nova seemed more human, with every smile and gesture, like an extraordinary beauty. He found himself unconsciously attracted to her, completely forgetting that she was just a machine. In the maintenance bay, Dongfang was watching the busy engineering robots with great interest. Amidst the sparks, the aircraft was being disassembled. 4 short and stout metal nozzles were lined up on the ground, surrounded by a vast number of various parts. From a distance, it looked as if the aircraft had been opened and laid flat on the ground. Captain, take a close look. The power system of this aircraft is almost entirely composed of metal parts, with no cables or transmission lines at all. It seemed they only needed to draw these patterns to achieve energy transfer. Look at the jet openings. They are made directly of metal. Clearly, the secret lies within the patterns. Dongfang nodded in agreement. How unique. Then let's try to draw these patterns. Is there anything special about the materials? Not really. Except that the exterior is made of ceramic composite materials, while the internal components are primarily titanium alloy, with only a small amount of rare earth elements infused. Nova put down the large nozzle that weighed hundreds of pounds and shook her head. Have you forgotten? They can even draw it on stones, and it will still operate normally. Right. Dongfang recalled the spherical sentinels in the main hall. Nova, let's not think too much. Let's give it a try. Let's build an aircraft ourselves. A large number of engineering robots entered the maintenance bay, picking up parts in the order they were arranged and heading towards the metal smelting center. Captain, your phone is ringing. Nova tugged at the corner of Dongfang's clothing. Okay. Dongfang took the flower-shaped phone that Nova handed over. It turned out that during the previous fierce battle, Dongfang's phone had already been reduced to a pile of components. When he heard Nova's reminder, he instinctively reached for his pocket and pulled out a screen that was about to crack in half. Chairman, the game Interstellar Colonization Era has completed all internal testing tasks and is ready to launch the public beta today. Do you have time to come? Sun Jimu's voice came through. Dongfang put down the phone and glanced at the time. January 6th, 2023. It had been 5 days since the product launch conference ended. And he didn't realize so much time had passed while staying underwater. When and where will it be held? I'm currently in Deep City and can make it. Interstellar Colonization Era was an important project for Dongfang recently, so he had specifically asked Sun Jimu to notify him when the public beta was released. At 2:00 p.m. At the new address of the Drizzle Studio. It was now 8:00 a.m., so Dongfang had plenty of time to get there. Alright, I'll see you at the company this afternoon. Dongfang hung up the phone and casually stuffed it into his pocket. Captain, that's my Nova, she said weakly. It's just a prop for you. Let me use it. Dongfang chuckled and walked towards the smelting room first. It was his first time in the smelting room, so he was curious about how the planet's inhabitants smelted metals. Did they use a blast furnace to refine steel as well? As the hatch opened, he saw a giant machine. It was square and had 4 openings on each side, glowing with orange light. It was nothing like the sparks and flowing molten steel he had imagined. Nova, is this an automatic atomic metallurgy device? Yes, Captain, it is. But how does it work? Nova giggled and waved at a nearby engineering robot. Several engineering robots put down the parts they were holding and walked to a corner, then carried some ores to the opening behind the smelting device. The orange light extended and enveloped the ores in the robots' hands. Once the robots released their grip, the ores were sucked inside, and the other robots followed suit. All the ores were drawn into the machine. Look, Nova snapped her fingers. Instantly, a holographic image of the machine's interior appeared in Dongfang's eyes. He saw the ores that had just been sent in by the robots being illuminated by an even more dazzling white light, disappearing without a trace. They were first decomposed into atomic states. If we only need iron, the smelting device will automatically separate the remaining atoms, forming pure single-atom substances like copper, gold, and silver. The openings on the left and right are mainly for expelling the pure substances that have been decomposed, so we can use them when needed. The opening at the front expels the metal we need to smelt, and we can freely set the type, size, and appearance of the alloy. Just as she was speaking, a shiny steel ingot was sent out. Nova walked over and directly picked it up. Its temperature was the same as room temperature. You can touch it. The tentacles were warm, smooth, and delicate. Then, from the huge nozzle, various parts began to emerge, while the engineering robots continuously fed or into the equipment. Dongfang glanced at the aircraft parts laid out on the ground, which looked identical. This is really convenient. Can it directly engrave the patterns as well? That might not be possible, as its original design was only for smelting metal parts. Dongfang rubbed his hair. Although the smelting device seemed to operate quite quickly, he wondered how long this would take. By the way, Nova, please duplicate all the parts first. The launch event is about to start, and I need to check it out, Dongfang said seriously, seemingly unfazed by the heavy workload and monotony. Chapter 123. Promotional video. As the shuttle flew out of the starship, Dongfang realized they had returned to the underwater base. So, he still had to fly for a while to attend the launch event. Dongfang silently praised himself. Indeed, attending the launch event was a wise decision. The speed of the shuttle was certainly impressive. Before 9 o'clock, he had already arrived at the office building of Little Raindrop Studio. As soon as he entered the door, Dongfang saw two people walking and chatting. You have to admit, the company is really impressive. As soon as the new phone was released, I immediately upgraded to one, fully charged 24 hours a day. I haven't charged my new phone since I started using it. The other person nodded in agreement, saying, yes. I've heard that major cities are actively building large wireless charging facilities, and they will gradually be rolled out nationwide. It's amazing that we can say goodbye to chargers in the future. The two walked away, their voices gradually fading. And the helmets. Dongfang felt a bit emotional. The company had truly managed to change people's lifestyles. Taking the elevator to the 20th floor, the company logo came into view. The entire floor was occupied by Little Raindrop Studios' office space. The interior decoration of the company was quite distinctive, filled with elements from the game Journey to the West. For instance, there was a life-size statue of Sun Wukong at the entrance, incredibly lifelike, with every detail meticulously crafted. Dongfang reached out to touch the golden staff it held. Sir, I'm sorry to disturb you, but our dolls are not to be touched. A voice with a slight Cantonese accent came from behind him. Dongfang turned around to see a young woman at the front desk, standing behind a bionic robot, wearing a formulaic smile. Dongfang calmly withdrew his hand, nodded, and asked her, is Sun Jiamu here? The receptionist's smile instantly brightened. Sun Jiamu is quite a figure in the industry, and this young man's casual way of addressing him indicated that he was no ordinary person. He is here. Please wait in the reception room while I report. The young woman extended her hand to lead the way. No need to be so formal. Just take me to his office. Okay. It seemed their relationship was quite special, and the young woman realized this in her heart. Sun Jiamu was currently immersed in the 99th participation of the first phase of the task in colonial era. The girl stood there, a bit at a loss, not knowing what to do when others saw the general manager playing games during work hours. Dongfang knew that this person was definitely playing games again, possibly looking for bugs, so he didn't blame him and walked over to tap his helmet. Sun Jiamu took off the helmet, and his dazed expression gave him away. Dongfang found it amusing. This old guy was probably playing around in theory class again. Chairman, you arrived so early without calling. I would have come to pick you up. Sun Jiamu snapped out of it. The big boss was here. The receptionist, who was about to leave, peeked out to take a closer look at Dongfang. This was the big boss, truly a diamond-level bachelor. Tall, handsome, young, and wealthy. The girl blushed and quickly retreated. How could you see your real work state through a phone call? Sun Jiamu awkwardly scratched his head. I'm just doing the final testing. I just discovered 2 bugs. Please, have a seat. I'll get you some tea. All right, I'm not blaming you. Dongfang sat down and looked around Sun Jiamu's office. Indeed, a seasoned gaming enthusiast, the office decor was just like the outside. How is the press conference preparation going? You can rest assured. Well, considering the first phase of the training task is a bit too difficult, I'm worried it might discourage 99 players right from the start. So, I've taken a segment from the later part of the game where they reach the moon as the theme for this promotion. I've also included highlights from the training, interspersed with clips of that Zhang Hao kid. Additionally, there will be live demonstrations at the press conference. I originally planned to invite Zhang Hao, but he stubbornly refused, so I had to choose someone else. But he is not as good as that kid. It's a pity. Now that kid is the general manager, no one can match my flair. Chairman, take a look at the promotional video. Dongfang was almost laughing out loud internally, but he maintained a straight face. He nodded slightly, afraid to laugh out loud. A promotional video lasting 9.5 minutes appeared on the office screen. The game's opening was used as the beginning of the promotional video. Although the effect was slightly inferior to the helmet, it could still surpass all CG animations on Blue Star. It was hard to tell whether it was animation or real footage. Then, the scene shifted, and the game characters began rigorous training, with theoretical studies, physical training, and maintenance training flashing by. The center of the screen revealed a chubby rocket, which took off from the launch pad with the roar of ignition. The speed kept increasing, flying out of Blue Star and landing on the moon. Countless materials were transported out of the rocket by astronauts. The playback began to change at a faster speed. A small forward base that could accommodate 50 people was quickly constructed. Rockets continuously took off and landed, and the base gradually expanded. The metal processing center, smelting center, and equipment manufacturing center rose one after another. Next came tall residential buildings, sports venues, and a complete city was constructed. The scene shifted to the near-Earth orbit of a blue planet, where a large dock was established. A spacecraft was built and set off towards Mars. The camera swept past the tail nozzle of the spacecraft, and the screen went black, revealing many small meteoroids that formed the words Interstellar Colonization Era. The promotional animation concluded, leaving endless imagination. Indeed, the Eastern representative nodded continuously, satisfied that the effect met expectations. Receiving recognition from the big boss, a broad smile spread across Sun Jiamu's face. He had previously reported the situation over the phone, but due to the Eastern representative being deep underwater, Nova had only given a perfunctory response before hanging up. Hence, Sun Jimu felt somewhat unsettled. It was only after receiving the big boss's direct acknowledgement that he finally felt at ease. At 2:00 p.m., on the top floor of the building, a bustling crowd was entering in an orderly fashion. Sun Jimu, dressed in a custom-made suit from the Earthring Company, confidently walked up to the podium. Today's press conference is quite special. We will also have a live demonstration. So today, I am not the main character. Everyone must be eager, right? Haha, let's get started. As the lights dimmed, the large screen lit up, and a bright flash revealed the full view of the blue planet. The audience immediately fell silent. The 9-minute video captivated everyone at the press conference. Humanity's greatest dream is to conquer the universe, with the first step being the moon. Therefore, the release of such a realistic game was significant. Once the promotional video ended, the atmosphere on-site became exceptionally warm, reaching a climax during the press conference. Sun Jiamu smiled as if he had caught a hen, stepping back onto the podium once more. It was only when the scene gradually quieted down that he spoke again. Next, please watch the live demonstration. The spotlight behind him illuminated, and 5 testers from the Little Raindrop studio appeared in the light. Each wore a helmet and comfortably reclined in lounge chairs. The large screen behind them split into 5 sections, depicting the moment of landing on the lunar surface. The 5 donned their spacesuits and cautiously opened the hatch, carefully descending down the metal ladder. One of them turned back to glance at the distant blue planet. A roar erupted from the audience. The visuals were so realistic, identical to the photos sent back by satellites. It was evident that the gamers were also captivated by the scene, staring blankly at the slowly rotating blue planet. At that moment, attendees were filled with tears of joy. Hello everyone, I am Zhang Heng from Little Raindrop Studio of Earthring Group, and I am the team leader for the trial team. I can't hear what you all are saying, so you'll have to listen to me, he said, raising a small red flag in his hand. The attendees gasped, and no one spoke. They quietly watched Zhang Heng transport materials and assemble equipment. Until several people exited the game, the press conference remained eerily quiet with no one speaking. The live stream had turned into a chaotic mess. Player A, what did I say? I mentioned last time that the company was going to create a sun. But instead of that, they shot for the moon. Impressive. Player B, you bunch of noobs don't understand anything. Let my army of crossbows explore new territories. Unify 6 spheres. Bystander, which 6 spheres are those? Bystander A. It must be the fire sphere, water sphere, earth sphere, wood sphere, gold sphere, and then the last one. Let the Emperor tell us. Bystander B. It must be the King sphere. Keep up down there. King sphere 1, Skynet sphere 1999. The Emperor popped up again. ISNT at the moon? Your IQ is concerning. Xiao Ming's mother has 3 sons. The first is called Damao. The second is called Air Mao. And what is the third called? It's called the Emperor. Emperor 2000. Oh, Dongfang helplessly shut his phone. Every time he peeked at their chat, it would veer off topic into unrelated territories. The press conference had garnered huge attention. Sun Jimu wore a proud smile on his face. Chairman, how was my performance? This old guy, showing off, I don't want to deal with you. Dongfang turned and returned to the office upstairs. He was hungry and wanted to try the working meal from Xiao Yudi Studio. Liu was a hardcore gamer, standing 175 centimeters tall and weighing 160 pounds. No matter how expensive a new game was, he would buy it immediately upon release. Hence, he remained a single dog. No girl could tolerate someone who treated gaming as a career. Since Xiao Yudi Company released Journey to the West, Liu had become crazy about that game. Of course, There were also wireless chargers and gaming helmets, and then he became a fan of the company. Outside of gaming, he often browsed the company's homepage to see if there were any games to alleviate his gaming drought, since he had already completed Journey to the West twice. Today was the open beta time for Interstellar Colonization Era, and he had known that 200 was the press conference time. Unfortunately, due to work, he couldn't watch the live stream, so he spent the entire afternoon anxious like an ant on a hot pan, completely distracted. He made various basic errors in the simple report assigned by his team leader. The team leader scolded him harshly, but his mind was solely on the game. So it wasn't until the third attempt that he finally completed his work. He stared blankly at the clock on the wall, hoping the hands would move faster. Finally, it was 5 p.m. He immediately packed up and clocked out. On his way to the subway station, he could hardly wait to open his phone. The press conference had long ended, so he could only watch the replay. All the way, he was completely immersed in the press conference, imagining himself as an astronaut exploring space. He opened the door, changed his shoes, took off his clothes, and turned on his computer, all in one go. After hitting the download button, he finally slumped down in his chair. Oh, and the helmet. He dragged his exhausted body up 5 flights of stairs and struggled to pull a box out from under the desk, giving it a couple of kisses. My treasure. Soon, Lou completed the game download, connected the headset, and started the installation. Just then, there was a knock at the door. His takeout had arrived. Lou was all set to tackle interstellar colonization and was determined to land on the moon today. After eating and getting the game installed, he quickly put on the headset. The opening animation was perfect. The training acceptance message was impressive. The long train ride was absurd. Why do I still have to participate in theoretical studies? What the heck is astronomy? Look at me. Can I even run with a load? And there's anti-addiction measures? I'm already an adult. As soon as he took off the headset, Lou let out a roar towards the sky. What is wrong with this guy? Staying up all night and howling like a wolf. The lady downstairs, cozy in her warm blanket, was startled awake. Clearly, the soundproofing was not that great. I'm going to give you a bad review. No stars at all. I'll give you -5 stars. Lou opened the official website and carefully searched the download page, only to find that the star rating feature was not enabled. What the heck? Are you afraid players will give you negative ratings by not opening the rating function? The number of times Lou exclaimed was already beyond his total for the year. And it was only January 6th. This was intolerable. I'm going to the message board. No ratings? I'll still rate you. Then Lou saw the bizarre message board of the company, which only had one official message. Everyone must be attracted by the fun game. And to be frank, we take game development seriously. Its replies totaled a whopping 500,000. Lou clicked on the replies. Sun Jiamo, you made such a beautiful promotional video. But are you sure this is a game? You better remake me, because in this lifetime, I can't be an astronaut. -5 stars, it has to be negative. Brothers, help me get this up so they can see. The top comment had 250,000 likes. Lou was amused and continued scrolling down. I'm an eliminated astronaut. And I must say, this is exactly like the training content. It even exceeds it. So I sincerely advise my fellow brothers, if you don't have any foundation, don't play this game. I suddenly realized I'm an idiot. Everything the teacher taught me is already returned. It's not the game's fault, it's mine. What happened to the colonization era? Are you serious about making games? But damn, the experience is amazing. It's really great. Simply unbeatable. Awesome. Lou's anger dissipated. And he seriously said, the experience of this game is really fantastic. Can I try going somewhere else instead of the training center? As soon as the thought crossed his mind, he put the headset back on. Travel around the world without leaving home. Everything you want is here. From the memoirs of Lou, the founder of the tourism gameplay in colonization era. Of course, that's all for later. At this moment, Dongfang had no way of knowing that he was on his way back to Yan'an, with a lot of matters piling up at the company that needed his attention. Chapter 125. Planning meeting on the highway back to Yan'an, Dongfang noticed that on the expressway out of Xi'an, a section of the road had been set up with numerous triangular barriers, indicating ongoing construction work. Initially, he thought it was just routine road maintenance. However, as his car sped past the construction site, he caught a glimpse and was surprised to see some products from a certain company stacked on the ground, large wireless charging transmission devices. Dongfang immediately understood. They were about to pilot a wireless charging section. It seemed that the country was moving quickly, wanting to break free from the constraints of petroleum energy. Dongfang fell into thought. After the large-scale application of wireless charging technology, the issue of electric energy would be significant, although it could free them from traditional energy structures. With such a vast country, the electricity consumption was a concern. He thought of the most reliable and clean energy source, controllable nuclear fusion, often referred to as artificial sun. However, the company had no relevant technological reserves. Rushing to introduce the technology could be risky. The principle of nuclear fusion, while simple in theory, involves fusing two light atomic nuclei into a new nucleus. To achieve nuclear fusion, electrons need to be stripped from the light atoms. And there is a repulsive force between the atomic nuclei. To address the repulsion issue, high temperatures are a breakthrough point. Only by reaching the temperature necessary for nuclear fusion can the atomic nuclei move vigorously enough to overcome the repulsion and achieve fusion. While this sounds relatively easy, the reality of achieving it is incredibly challenging. Currently, there is no material on Blue Star that can withstand temperatures exceeding millions of degrees. Thus, scientists have considered magnetic confinement. But such devices are enormous. Moreover, the maximum control time is only 100 seconds, which is a significant gap from the desired 1,000 seconds. With these thoughts in mind, Dongfang took out his phone. Yuan Gu, let's convene a remote video conference this afternoon, inviting all the heads of the Group's subsidiaries to discuss the next step in the company's development planning. Okay, in fact, I have already completed a proposal and was just about to report it to you. Perfect timing, let us review it together this afternoon. At 3 p.m., in the conference room of the company, various leaders gathered. Of course, individuals like Zhang Hao, Sun Jiamei, and Xiao Buyan joined online via the video system. As everyone settled in, Dongfang walked in and took a seat at the head of the table. As the saying goes, a year's plan starts in spring. However, it feels more fitting to say that a year's plan starts in winter nowadays. Therefore, we gathered everyone here today for a planning meeting. This is to discuss the future development plans of the enterprise. Without further ado, let us invite General Gao to report on the development plan. Gao Yuan cleared his throat. Today, my colleagues and I will discuss the future 5-year plan for our company. Established in 2021, we have grown from a small company with just over 10 employees to a group company with more than 20,000 staff members in just 2 years. We have made significant progress in mechanical equipment manufacturing, chip manufacturing, battery manufacturing, new energy vehicle production, biopharmaceuticals, and materials. We have even become a global leader in software design and game development. Thanks to the high-speed network equipment from a certain company, our intelligent assistant has demonstrated unique charm. The projector in the conference room automatically displays our company's achievements in various fields as I present. Recently, we launched wireless charging technology, allowing various devices to operate without power cords. I can proudly say that our company has changed lives on its own. Of course, this is the result of everyone's hard work here. The room erupted in enthusiastic applause, and everyone appeared flushed with pride. After 3 minutes, the applause finally subsided. Therefore, my first planning suggestion is our company's slogan, "Life is changed by us." This is both our direction of effort and our goal. I agree. One of my colleagues was the first to respond enthusiastically. I couldn't help but chuckle at the lively atmosphere. Let us wait until our chairperson finishes speaking. Yes, chairperson. The colleague quickly straightened up, putting on a serious demeanor in his office. However, we must not become complacent. I took the opportunity to sip some water to clear my throat. We should clearly recognize that, after achieving wireless charging technology, energy supply is a significant issue. If our product market share continues to grow at its current rate, we expect to reach over 40 coverage by next year. Therefore, my second suggestion is that we should enter the energy sector on a large scale and participate in the research and development of the next generation of energy solutions. Additionally, we need to further enhance the storage capacity of our battery packs. A colleague raised his hand, and I nodded to indicate he could speak. The laboratory has completed the development of the second-generation graphene battery, which has increased capacity by over 50 to 55 without changing its size. And the technology is now mature and ready for commercial production. Standardized production will begin soon. Another colleague nodded in agreement, emphasizing the need to continue exploring its potential. Good, he replied earnestly. My third suggestion is to leverage our advantages. We hold 4 military certifications, and our strengths lie in special vehicles, automation equipment, and materials. We should focus on these areas, using the next 2 years to establish a complete production line and explore products such as armored vehicles, tanks, and self-propelled artillery powered by electricity. The fourth suggestion, which is the most critical, is that we should plan to enter the aerospace and aviation sectors. The policies of the country will not change. We will never actively infringe upon the territorial integrity of others. Therefore, our future should be among the stars, where countless planets exist. Gao Yuan paused and said seriously, of course, we may not be able to achieve this immediately, but we can accumulate strength over 50 to 100 years, allowing our nation to once again stand at the pinnacle of the world. The atmosphere in the meeting room was solemn, and it was quiet. Dongfang took the floor. Haha, this is just our plan, so relax. Gao has only provided a general overview. Please take a close look at the documents in your hands and share your opinions. Chairman, I have a comment. Zhang Hao's voice came through the speaker. Isn't this spreading ourselves too thin? Currently, we have ventured into so many industries. If we encounter risks, I think we should stabilize before proceeding further. You're not wrong. We are different from other companies. In fact, Gao's planning has been quite good. However, Dongfang paused, considering some issues. We can't take steps that are too big. Otherwise, we could run into serious problems. Chapter 126. Yan Dongfang thought of Ikra, which, after mastering the pulse of global energy, immediately faced a war of annihilation. If Dongfang were to release top-tier controllable nuclear fusion technology, it would not only affect the company, but could even lead the nation into war. A layer of cold sweat broke out on Dongfang's back, and he involuntarily shivered. He could just walk away or devastate the flag-bearing country and retake control of the blue planet. But what about the ordinary citizens? Would they have to endure a merciless war? Therefore, this technology needs to be put on hold. If the country becomes the strongest on the blue planet, its military would be unmatched. It could even achieve the capability to keep enemies at bay beyond its borders. This would significantly reduce the risk of war. Only then could the motherland achieve the goal of peaceful rise. Thinking of this, Dongfang glanced out the window. The sun was shining, and the sky was clear. He made up his mind that this was the kind of world he preferred. Zhang Hao's point was also very reasonable. So I would like to suggest that our next focus should be on life sciences and aerospace manufacturing. After Dongfang finished speaking, Gao Yuan was the first to express his agreement. I agree, but planning does not mean immediate execution. We can make technological reserves while stabilizing the market, accumulating strength for future development. I agree. A single plan, implemented in phases. Zhang Hao then stated. Following that, everyone expressed their agreement, concluding the significant meeting that would determine the future direction of the company. Captain, we have made a discovery. Dongfang put down his pen and leaned back in his chair, focusing all his attention on the images transmitted by Nova. Go ahead and tell us. You see, to prevent damage to the original aircraft, we replicated all the parts according to the ratio of 11, achieving nearly 100% restoration. We can now say that we have 4 aircraft. Currently, one has been fully assembled. After assembling our first replica aircraft, we immediately made an astonishing discovery. As you look at the instrument panel of the aircraft, it surprisingly operates on its own. Yet we have only assembled it without injecting any energy. Upon closer inspection, the instrument panel in the cockpit indeed emits a faint blue light. Although the display is not clear, the blue light flickers like a breath. What principle is at work here? I scanned all the patterns into a large optical computer and simulated all the arrangements, discovering that these patterns function somewhat like talismans. Yes, they resemble the talismans used in certain philosophical traditions. While those talismans have no real effect, these are different. I drew the patterns on a specially made metal plate, and it began to absorb an unknown energy. Nova picked up another metal plate, which indeed had the same patterns as those on the temple floor. Blue light flowed through the intricate lines, and above the metal plate floated a small orb of light, directly above the center of the lotus-like pattern. Could this be the vital energy described in ancient texts? Eastern's eyes widened. It's astonishing that our ancestors had already mastered this kind of energy. Does that mean the answer can be found in those ancient texts? I fear not, Captain. I have compared a large number of talismanic texts and found that while they share similarities, there are still significant differences. I suspect that practitioners from this region must have seen these extraterrestrial civilizations carving patterns, and they likely observed the Maya for a long time. Perhaps the Maya encountered difficulties and had practitioners assist them, and in doing so, the practitioners memorized these patterns. By the way, I've named it Yuan. Nova. Your speculation makes a lot of sense. This could indeed explain why during the Wei and Jin dynasties, everyone was focused on alchemy. It's entirely possible that they observed the Maya refining spacecraft or parts when they carved the Yuan and saw it fly away. They must have believed that those metals were extraordinary treasures, containing the vital energy that could lead one to transcendence. Nova nodded, suggesting that they might have encountered something akin to those figurines, just like me. She then picked up a metal plate, extended her index finger, and a laser shot out. A flame like Yuan was swiftly engraved on the plate. The blue light began to flow through the Yuan, and with a pop, a small flame emerged from the metal plate. Nova continued, taking another plate to inscribe a water-like Yuan. A sphere of water floated above the plate. Then a small tornado and a dazzling golden light appeared in sequence. After the last metal plate was engraved and placed on the table, this time it showed no changes. Eastern looked at these metal plates and recalled the statue on the altar in the temple. Didn't it have fire, water, wind, and light floating above its hand and head? The last one must be the anomaly held by the statue with the rice. Nova, place a flower on that last metal plate. Captain, do you mean the one that hasn't changed? Yes, remember that statue holding the rice in the temple? Nova's eyes lit up, genuinely bright. Could it be a robot? Laser beams could even shoot out of its eyes. To the east, the engineering robot really brought a flower. Nova gently placed it on the metal plate, and the flower floated up. Moreover, the flower that was slightly wilted immediately regained its vitality, with dewdrops glistening on the petals. It looked even better than when it was on the stem. Nova, look! The Eastern figure sat up straight, and, too excited, even shouted out loud. The secretary at the door heard the sound and thought the boss was calling her, so she knocked and waited for a full 10 minutes. After not hearing the Eastern figure's voice, she returned to her seat in a huff. This boss is so unique, always surprising and elusive. Just like a few days ago, when he vanished without a sound and then suddenly returned. The Eastern figure had no idea about this, and after shouting once, he immediately realized something was off and completely silenced himself. Nova, do we have seeds? Let us put them on and try. Commander, that's right, we have watermelon seeds. The robot brought over a large watermelon, took off the flour, and placed the freshly extracted black seeds on top. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The Eastern figure and Nova fixed their eyes on the black seed. Soon, 20 minutes passed, and just when they were about to give up, the hard shell of the seed cracked open. A tender green sprout actually emerged from the shell. Wow! The Eastern figure shouted again. Nova, does this mean what Taoism says about cultivation is real? Can we really harness this energy? What would happen if I carved Yan on my skin? Chapter 127. Initial emergence. This might not work. I found that the carving requirements for Yan are also very high. There are strict requirements for depth, width, and materials. If it were possible, I'm sure the Taoists in Huagua would have succeeded long ago. The talismans written on yellow paper should also work. The Eastern figure chuckled. I was just asking. I didn't mean to carve it on my body. But if we enlarge the volume of the metal plate, can we use fire to generate electricity? Use water for irrigation? This is simply all the necessary conditions for building a complete ecosystem. It seems the colonial era can come earlier. Nova, you continue to research in depth. I believe we will use it soon. Understood, Commander. With the help of the superbrain, I believe we will have results soon. Nova nodded heavily. The call ended. The Eastern figure picked up the financial report in his hand once again. As of now, the total income of the Earth Ring Company has exceeded 50 billion renminbi, and the funds in the account have reached 65 billion renminbi. The Eastern figure waved his hand and allocated 30 billion for the first batch of investment in aerospace and aviation. He allocated 5 billion to Zhangchang's biopharmaceutical company. Only then was he satisfied to hand the documents to the secretary who had knocked and entered. Tell Zhangchang to come to me. The Eastern figure instructed and then immersed himself in the piled-up documents. The application report for the chemical engine project and the mechanical equipment manufacturing work has been approved. The application materials for the research and development of the next-generation supergraphene battery have been approved. Dongfang quickly reviewed a thick stack of documents and then picked up the last file he had set aside earlier. It was the application for establishing a specialized hospital for regional tumors in the biopharmaceutical laboratory. Just as he was carefully reading the report, there was a knock on the door. Chairman, you called for me? Zhang Chang walked in, looking in good spirits. Have a seat. The female secretary swayed her waist as she brought in tea. Zhang Chang's eyes widened slightly. Such a beautiful woman, and the boss remained indifferent. How nice it would be to have someone like that. What are you thinking? Let's discuss your report. Zhang Chang snapped back to reality and put on a serious expression. Boss, our biopharmaceutical lab has completed the research on lymphocyte T cells and perforin. However, the clinical trials for the anti-cancer drug take too long. We've just finished the third phase of trials and are about to get approval for market release. But our drug, or rather our treatment method, is fundamentally different from traditional medications. As you know, we need to first extract virus T cells from the patient's cancerous tissue before we can further amplify them. If we want to promote this on a large scale, the secret will be leaked. But I can't help but think of the suffering my mother went through. Zhang Chang's eyes reddened as he recalled his mother's state of agony. Boss, I just want those patients to recover sooner and live healthy lives. Dongfang could empathize with Zhang Chang's feelings. Hadn't he gone through something similar? If it weren't for the advancements in research, would his father still be able to run his small shop healthily? I agree. How large of a hospital do you need to build? The bigger, the better. There are too many people with cancer in our country. Seeing Dongfang remain silent and staring intently at him, Zhang Chang lowered his head. To be honest, I didn't conduct detailed research before. I just wanted to benefit the people as soon as possible, so I hastily wrote the report. I'll rewrite it. Dongfang slowly nodded. Zhang Chang, you are now the head of a company. You need to learn to think more. As the saying goes, no investigation, no right to speak. You should base your decisions on thorough investigation before determining the next steps. Dongfang actually agreed with Zhang Chang's report. However, seeing that the report was filled with enthusiasm but lacked constructive content, he had called Zhang Chang in to provide guidance and to nurture someone willing to take risks to eliminate potential issues for the company. I understand. Boss, I will conduct the research again and resubmit the application. Don't rush. Just know it. I'll approve 200 million in funding for you to secure the land first. Let's build a large hospital with 3,000 beds. You need to be strict with the finances. Don't let me down. Boss, if I don't do well, I'll take the responsibility. Zhang Chang rarely made a joke as he left the room. Dongfang could tell that he had truly absorbed the information, and his performance did not disappoint Dongfang. From then on, Zhang Chong would thoroughly consider everything before taking action, ensuring nothing was overlooked. After handling all the matters, Dongfang finally found some leisure time. He retrieved a gaming headset from the cabinet behind him and lay back in his chair to play games. While Dongfang was completely immersed in the game, a significant news report broke in Huaguo. A major announcement was made. The country's aerospace industry had achieved another significant breakthrough. Thanks to the efforts of private tech companies at the National Aerospace Research Institute, we made substantial progress in materials science. They developed a new type of metal material that performs well at temperatures up to 5,000 degrees. This breakthrough has been applied to our aerospace engines. Just yesterday, the Chang'e 9 successfully launched, with a remarkable carrying capacity of 400 tons, surpassing the carrying capacity of 43 tons compared to a prominent heavy rocket. With such superior materials, our aviation engines benefited greatly. Recently, the highly anticipated Hong 30 and J-20 have been successfully finalized and are being equipped into our Air Force. Over the next 2 years, we will complete the upgrade of all fighter jets. Let's give a round of applause to the dedicated researchers. After the host finished speaking, the news program took a minute to replay the footage of the Chang'e 9 launch and the Hong 30 flight. Meanwhile, in the capital, the highest leader of Huaguo and Elder Zhao turned off the television after watching the news. Chairman, has the news already been released? Isn't it a bit too early? Elder Zhao furrowed his brows, seemingly worried. Today, the highest leader had summoned him, indicating there were important matters to discuss. However, before they even began, they were greeted with this explosive news. Elder Zhao, the reason I called you here today is to inform you about this. The successful finalization of the Hong 30 and the first flight of the Chang'e 9 are the results of your hard work. This is what I should do for the country. But still, regarding my earlier question, is it too early? The highest leader waved his hand. We must realize our dream of standing at the pinnacle of the world again. This is a necessary process. If we keep it under wraps, it will lead to more speculation and unnecessary consequences from others. When it's time to show our strength, we must do so to instill a strong deterrent in them. They should think carefully before making any decisions. Our power is already strong enough to handle risks from all sides, and it's time to raise our powerful voice. His words were forceful, filled with fervor that stirred Elder Zhao's blood. He recalled the days of fighting against the enemy, unafraid even with just basic arms. Now, with the launch of the Hong 30, Huaguo had filled the last gap. Who could they fear? Anyone who dared to reach out would have their hands broken. Chapter 128. New Discoveries. Elder Zhao nodded heavily, appearing quite excited. However, he quickly calmed down and raised another question. Chairman, I believe you must have considered this. But I want to say that it might trigger a new round of competition in space. The top leader chuckled. What is there to fear? I want them to join in and chase after us. Right now, countries on our planet are all struggling with the pandemic, including the leading nation, which is overwhelmed and unable to cope. So we need to release relevant information at this critical moment. Next, we will land on the moon. Let them only follow us from a distance. After they drag themselves down, we will reclaim the territory. Elder Zhao nodded repeatedly. Our nation is already strong enough, and the future is promising. Perhaps in our lifetime, we will truly see the long-cherished unification. Chairman, I agree. Elder Zhao raised his hand and gave a standard military salute. With your support, I believe we can definitely succeed. The two tightly Wuju la Bitudik show. In the game, Dongfang encountered Sun Jiemu again. Mr. Zhang, I can't say you haven't come. I've been waiting for you for a long time. You didn't add me as a friend last time. Let's add each other as friends first. He hadn't done anything in the game recently and was just waiting for Zhang how to go online. Sun Jiemu planned to shoot another promotional video after the official launch of Interstellar Colonization Era to attract more players. In the end, there are always gems to be found, even if they're rare. Under Sun Jiemu's strong request, they added each other as friends. Mr. Sun, to be honest, I need to speed up my progress. We won't be able to play together. Hey, isn't this planning to shoot a promotional video for our company's game? The people in the company are not diligent and can't even pass the first stage. That is why I thought of you. Dongfang finally understood that he was eager to work. How do you plan to shoot it? Dongfang became interested, as it didn't require real people on camera. Only by attracting more people to play can we filter out the ones we want. You don't need to worry about me. I've gotten familiar with these NPCs recently. Just speed up the progress so I can handle the filming and editing. It's simple. Dongfang didn't say anything further and continued the training as required by the instructor. He first completed the spinning chair swing. There was nothing to say about this. It was just an anti-dizziness training, and Dongfang easily completed all the training content as required. Then he entered the isolation room for training, where he was locked alone in a room, isolated from people for a long time. This phase of training was different from other training, as it also cut off all contact in the game, including theoretical classes and communication with friends. All functions were stopped. The progress of time was accelerated, but of course, players would not feel the speed of time increasing. After all, The game only affects human thought. The faster the thought, the slower the time. Dongfang stayed in the isolation room for a full 30 days, where the soundproofing was exceptional, to the point that he couldn't hear any sounds from the outside world. Aside from the daily delivery of food, there was basically no sense of change. In the beginning, he could still control himself. His long-established biological clock allowed him to maintain a normal routine. However, as time went on, he gradually lost track of the passage of time. By the 12th day, anxiety and irritability began to alternate. He constantly recalled past experiences and analyzed gains and losses, murmuring to himself. It looked as though he were a patient in distress. In a frenzy, he pounded the walls, shouting and wanting to end the training. It was only when his hands were bloodied from hitting the walls that he quieted down and fell into a deep sleep. On the morning of the 13th day, the pain in his hands was incessant, and he finally remembered the dual practice method. He acted on the thought immediately. As soon as he initiated the first movement, his mind went blank. All negative emotions vanished without a trace. He returned to a normal state. He thought about the power of positive emotions and the practice of meditation. Having experienced life and death, his self-control far surpassed that of ordinary people. Thus, he easily got through the following days of training. Congratulations, Mr. Bai Ge. You have perfectly completed the isolation training. Sun Jimu stared with wide eyes, unable to utter a word. This game was simply insane. Just as the anti-addiction timer went off, he logged off and left without saying goodbye. He was indeed exhausted. After hastily eating a few bites in the dining hall, he fell asleep in the office. The next day at 6 o'clock a.m., he opened his eyes on time. After a quick wash, he pulled out the equipment and practiced the dual practice method. This time, he felt a significant difference. In the confinement room, the distraction-free training elevated his understanding of the dual practice method to a level he had never imagined before. Every movement was seamless, and the precision of his actions was akin to a textbook provided by Nova. He had broken through. A warm current flowed throughout his body, signaling the complete absorption of the newly injected gene serum. Nova, I have once again surpassed my limits. Can we inject the next stage of gene serum now? I'm afraid not, Captain, Nova replied, shrugging playfully. Due to the hasty escape, the starship did not carry advanced gene serums, so you probably can't continue. However, I have good news for you, Nova added. Does that mean I can't pilot the next generation mechs, or rather, the Starry mech for the time being? That is not good news. Your understanding isn't entirely wrong, but the good news I'm referring to is about the Yawn. Nova explained. These Yawn are truly powerful. I analyzed that they absorb a type of material from the 90 substances present in the unknown space. Intrigued, he said, I want to go to the base. Soon. The shuttle flew into the underwater base. Nova was waiting lively at the landing pad. He noticed that this time, the arrival of the transporter was different. It shut down all power systems 10 meters above the landing pad. However, the shuttle did not crash to the ground as Eastern had imagined. Instead, it floated about 1 meter above the ground, not settling steadily in mid-air like when the anti-gravity engine was activated, but rather bobbing up and down as if it were resting on a water surface. Even when Eastern jumped off the shuttle, it caused the vehicle to sway slightly. Is this the wind pattern? After standing on the ground, Eastern immediately noticed the faint glow of the control panel. Yes, I found the control for the wind pattern. Is there more? Of course, let's head to the equipment manufacturing center and take a look. As soon as Nova finished speaking, the ground began to move straight towards the manufacturing center. Chapter 129, Storage for Metal Plates. As soon as Eastern arrived at the manufacturing center, he saw many large metal plates laid out on the ground in front of the center. Captain, these are the functional panels we created based on the control panel, each measuring 55 meters. According to the panel's functions, I made wind panels, fire panels, light panels, and water panels. Can they be made larger? Eastern had an idea in mind. Of course, as long as we scale up the control panel proportionally. We can make the metal plates as large as needed by welding them together. Nova nodded lightly. Can we combine all these functions onto a single metal plate? This hasn't been tried yet, because each control panel is extremely complex, composed of at least 5,000 intricate patterns, with the wind panel having the least, and the light panel reaching up to 12,250 patterns. Nova shook her head and continued. Even if we made the metal plate large enough, the overlapping patterns would prevent the functions from working properly, so it isn't feasible at the moment. However, if we fully understand the principles behind the control panel, that would be a different story. That's already great. Let's first produce large light, water, and life panels. I have significant use for them soon. The fire and wind panels should be smaller, around 64 square meters, 8,080 centimeters, in size, Eastern said, turning to Nova. Then lay down on a wind panel, swaying and playing happily. Nova smiled as she watched, waiting until Eastern had enough fun before speaking again. Captain, we have also made a discovery regarding that metal piece. Eastern leaped down from midair. Why didn't you say so earlier? Bring it over for me to see. Wasn't it to wait until you were done playing? But we can't see it here, We need to go to the starship, Nova said, flipping her hair, exuding femininity. Eastern glanced at her and silently reminded himself that this is a machine, a machine. Then he regained his composure. Let's go? He adjusted his clothes, which had been blown askew while playing on the wind panel, and turned to leave. Captain, wait for me. I'm coming too, Nova said, taking long strides to catch up. In the maintenance room of the starship, Eastern once again saw the metal plate he had brought back. Nova, hurry up, let us get started. He urged as he saw Nova walking in leisurely. Please don't worry, the storage device is almost fully charged, just wait for about 10 more minutes. It seems to have run out of energy during previous use, and is now recharging itself. Nova walked a few steps to the metal platform, pointing at the gradually brightening patterns on the panel. Oh, how did you know it was a storage device? I forgot to mention. After I removed the display unit from the aircraft, I made a trial connection with the storage device and found that it contained a vast amount of information. By the time Nova finished her introduction, the storage device had completed its charging. It emitted a blue light, blinking like a breathing lamp, attracting the attention of the person in conversation. This state is just like when I took it out from the metal platform. Yes, Captain. This is its external manifestation after charging. Let us take a look together. Nova picked up the storage device and then took a triangular display unit from the maintenance table. She also grabbed a pre-welded metal frame. The other person leaned in closely to examine it and noticed that the metal frame was intricately engraved with characters. Nova placed the display device onto the metal frame, and the patterns fit together perfectly. The storage device, metal frame, and display formed a complete unit. The originally dark triangular display lit up immediately. My kin, hello. When you see this footage, it means we have already left the blue planet. After 2,000 years of accumulation, we have finally completed the repairs on the mothership and set off on our way home. This is the dream of all our kin. At this point, the masked humanoid in the footage paused, looking just like a human figure, and excitedly waved a golden scepter in hand, revealing a massive aircraft behind them, painted in blue. Its size was immense. As the camera pulled back, the speaker looked like an ant standing next to an elephant. There were many others dressed similarly, commanding human figures to either burn some bronze artifacts in a large fire or directly shatter them and bury them in a pit. Nova paused her translation. Captain, this is what I roughly inferred based on the stored data. There may be some inaccuracies or omissions, but the main content is close. As Nova finished speaking, the camera zoomed in again, and she continued to translate. Isn't it beautiful? It's exactly as magnificent as I imagined. Such perfection deserves our praise to the five gods, for they have given us strength. That was a bit off track. The person in the footage scratched their head, seeming a bit embarrassed. Because our kin value freedom, many have left the cities to live in the mountains and forests, and they even turned off their communication devices. They even activated high-power shields. What? Are you afraid of your kin discovering your location? Nova paused for a moment, not translating, as it likely wasn't anything good. Before we set off, we sent signals multiple times, but received no response. I'm talking about you, the one watching this footage. According to my opinion, there's no need to wait for you foolish people any longer. Just leave directly. The person in the image is constantly waving the scepter in their hand. And due to the force, the sound of the wind generated by the scepter can even be heard in the image. A fierce light flashed in their eyes. Humph. If it weren't for the high priest. Forget it. The single person flying device next to you is specially prepared for you undisciplined people by the high priest. Get on it. Remember to bring back the storage device, which contains all the data collected by the monitors on Blue Star after we leave. Once the flying device reaches the far side of the moon, there will be a small mothership parked there. The coordinates have been set. Once all the tribespeople gather, it will take you home. All right. Since the high priest has decided to save you, scum, I wish you good luck. The person in the image waved their hand, and the camera quickly zoomed out. Groups of people gathered towards the large spaceship. Upon closer inspection, Dongfang noticed that there were 35 people, each accompanied by a humanoid figure, which was controlling a mechanical animal that was moving, piled high with various items. Children were joyfully running around the humanoid figure, emitting bursts of laughter. They disappeared after entering the huge cabin. Then a few more people walked in. The screen dimmed. Nova, those large transport animals don't seem to be living creatures. They resemble wooden cattle and horses. Chapter 130. Are they here for tourism? You are right. I also noticed their similarity to the legendary wooden cattle and horses. The controller walks in front, touching the mechanical tongue to control its direction. Nova said, projecting the image of that machine into Dongfang's eyes. Sure enough, the humanoid figure's left hand was placed in the mouth of the machine. I wonder if Mr. Zhuge's wife might be a Maya. Just think of the marvelous 8 trigrams formation, the repeating crossbow, the Kongming lantern, and landmines. These inventions were at least 2,000 years ahead of humanity at that time. Can today Huagua even create wooden cattle and horses? Dongfang thought to himself, realizing that this ancestor was proficient in mechanical design and manufacturing, aerodynamics, formations, and chemistry. Damn, Dongfang exclaimed. Just think about how when Zhuge Liang campaigned against Meng Huo, the weapons of the Shu army couldn't pierce through the opponent's vine armor. Mr. Kongming even invented the fire beasts. The beast-shaped device spewed flames, turning Meng Huo's army to ashes. Isn't that just a flamethrower? Moreover, the term landmine was derived from Mr. Kongming's naming. There are records stating that a landmine contains 9 cannons inside, buried 30 paces deep, connected with bamboo rods to ignite the powder line. So once activated, mountains shatter and stones crack. Note 1. Nova, you can't say it's not possible. Just as Dongfang finished speaking, the previously extinguished display lit up again. In the triangular display, an image of Blue Star appeared, slowly rotating. After all, it is the most familiar to one's own homeland. So Dongfang reached out and tapped on the map of Huaguo. The map quickly zoomed in, reaching above a certain area where numerous secret buildings were visible on the ground. Further east, the map zoomed in again. The scene before the observer was astonishing. The image displayed a quaint ancient city, surrounded by tall walls. A clock tower stood at the center of the city, which was bustling with humans celebrating, decorated with lights and an air of festivity. Captain, this is a photograph. And it was taken over 500 years ago. The observer carefully examined the clothing of one of the riders, recognizing it as a style from the early Ming dynasty. Indeed, it was from that period, as the attire resembled the braided garments of the Yuan dynasty but was distinct in its own right. Zhu Yuanzhang reinstated Han traditions, leading to a reformation of clothing standards. By the mid to late Ming dynasty, styles like the Feiyu and Qilin robes had emerged, fully incorporating Han characteristics. Thus, Nova concluded that this image was captured during the early Ming period. The observer nodded and clicked on the clock tower. Immediately, a row of symbols appeared to its right. Look, Captain, this is also significant evidence of the early Ming period. The adjacent symbols are of Maya script, meaning this tower was built on a square base. With a brick and wood structure, 3 stories, and a total height of 36 meters, covering an area of 377 square meters. This was taken when the tower was newly constructed. The observer then examined the other buildings, revealing similar descriptions. However, when clicking on the humans, no symbols appeared. It seemed the Maya were only concerned with environmental changes and showed no interest in humans. Is there anything else from Nova? The observer looked at the unfamiliar symbols, feeling overwhelmed. They contained similar information, but most pertained to natural disasters. As Nova operated, many images of earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis appeared. Accompanying them were more symbols, indicating a wealth of recorded data. It seemed the Maya were studying climate and environmental conditions. Their technological level appeared to be at the early stages of a secondary civilization. They should have the capability to alter the climate. What do you think? The observer posed a question upon realizing this. I can't say for certain. In some respects, they indeed exceed the level of a primary civilization, but in others, they seem somewhat behind. Just look at their clothing. I need to continue searching for related evidence elsewhere on Blue Planet. In fact, there were also records about the Earth's core, but only a small portion of it seemed to have been deliberately deleted. There were obvious gaps in some of the recorded information. Nova frowned. Her fingers moved quickly across the triangular display, stopping at an image of a sinkhole. Look, there's only one line of symbols next to it, which means, stay away, never enter. This is currently known as the Swallows Cave in Mexico, a popular spot for many skydiving enthusiasts. I can hardly imagine what danger lies here. So the next step is to send the robot for exploration. Alright, let me know what you find. I'm curious to see too. Given the technological level of the Maya at that time, there shouldn't be anything on the Blue Planet that would frighten them, so there must be significant discoveries inside. No way, this time I absolutely won't let you in. The secrets of the Blue Planet have exceeded my expectations. With a grin, Dongfang asked, is there anything else? Captain, that's about it. Nova seemed still immersed in the earlier strangeness and appeared somewhat sluggish. Alright, I need to take a trip to the desert. Have the shuttle take me there. Sure, Captain, do you need me to accompany you? That works, since there's no one else around. You can be my secretary for a while. Alright, one person and one machine. With no further conversation, they boarded the transport ship, heading northwest towards Huaguo. At 2:35 p.m., about 30 kilometers from Chang County, a strange phenomenon appeared on the Gobi Desert. Near the road, there was suddenly a cloud of dust rising. It looked like a vehicle moving at an extremely high speed was racing from the Gobi onto the road. Sure enough, after the dust settled, a vehicle appeared on the road. It was the newly released fuel off-road vehicle from a certain company. It was speeding towards Chang County. Nova, how does it feel? We're in a no man's land. Even if you push the car to the limit, you won't encounter anyone. Haha. It turned out that Dongfang was driving the vehicle straight down from the transport ship, wearing a delighted expression, proudly showing off to the robot beside him. Captain. This speed seems to me to be almost as slow as a turtle. If you've experienced space travel, you must agree with my point. How dare you speak to the captain like that? This is the fastest I've ever driven on the ground. Look at this speed, 200 kilometers per hour. Alright, it is indeed fast, but I'm starting to worry that we might exceed the speed of sound. Who told you to be the captain? Dongfeng burst into laughter, giving the steering wheel a hearty slap, slowing down the vehicle. Captain, what are you doing in Chang County? It's all desert here. Are you here for a vacation? Nova crossed his arms, looking outside with a dreamy expression. It is indeed somewhat beautiful. You think it's beautiful? From now on, you're my little secretary. And I'm the big boss. I want to rent a large piece of land in the desert to plant trees and combat desertification. I understand, Your Excellency. Chapter 131, 10,000 acres. Before long, the car drove into the urban area. The planning and construction of Chang County are quite good. The buildings in the urban area are not very tall, the roads are wide, and there are trees planted on both sides. However, since it is already winter, only the trunks remain. People's pace of life is very slow. Smiles are abundant on their faces as they stroll leisurely along the sidewalks. Dongfeng drove the car slowly to a stop outside the county government building. After getting out, he deliberately put on a casual demeanor and walked into the office building. Hello. Is this the office of the land department? Nova knocked on the door and asked the busy staff inside. Yes, may I ask what you two need? Dongfeng swaggered in. I would like to rent a piece of land. The staff smiled and said, you might be in the wrong place. We don't handle land rentals. However, we do manage auctions. Dongfeng felt a bit awkward. He thought all land was under the jurisdiction of the land department. Nova noticed Dongfeng's discomfort and took the initiative to ask, then may I ask where we should go to rent a desert? Oh, you want to rent a desert? What do you plan to do? The staff was puzzled, as there are 3 deserts within Chang County. Can we talk privately? Nova reached out her hand. The young staff member's face instantly flushed, showing 2 distinctive shades of Highland red. It was the first time he had seen such a beautiful girl. And for a single guy, this was quite overwhelming. However, he obediently stepped aside and walked over to Nova. This is our big boss. She's very wealthy. A few days ago, a sandstorm hit many places. On that day, he went out to impress a girl and ended up with a mouthful of dust. Getting laughed at by her, so on a whim, he decided to come and tackle sand. Upon hearing this, the young man felt relieved. It turned out to be a wealthy boss wanting to experience life, so he quickly shared all the relevant information with Nova and enthusiastically escorted Dongfeng out. Captain, we need to go to the town government to rent land. After getting in the car, Nova explained the land rental process. At the same time, the vehicle's central control screen displayed the navigation route. The weather is really nice today. Let's go. Dongfeng felt a bit embarrassed. The investigation was quite insufficient. Following the sparsely populated road, Dongfeng arrived at Takhong Town, also known as Oil Town. It is a newly established town that has been around for less than 10 years. Currently, it is the only town in the Taklamakan Desert. Dongfeng struck a pose of a nouveau riche again, wearing sunglasses as he entered the office. Excuse me, is this the town government? It was still Nova. Yes, what can I do for you? The local dialect was quite strong, making it a bit difficult for Dongfeng to understand. However, Nova responded smoothly. Well, this is my boss, and we want to rent some desert land for afforestation and sand control. You two aren't here to joke around, are you? Here to control sand? The staff was a bit bewildered, thinking to himself that he didn't expect someone to be foolishly wealthy. Well, renting is possible. Our standard is a minimum of 100 acres, with a lease term of no less than 30 years. The annual rent is 500 yuan per acre. He continued, explaining that the oil company had previously rented land, and the terms were similar, which is why he stated the conditions so readily. Dongfeng took off his glasses, ran his hand through his hair, and said, not expensive at all. I'll rent 10,000 acres for 30 years, cash payment. Let us sign the contract. The staff was once again bewildered. What the heck? You're serious about renting? I calculated it. 1 acre costs 50,000 yuan, so for 10,000 acres, the annual rent is 5 million yuan, and over 30 years, that's 1.5 billion yuan. 1.5 billion. Excuse me, I need to find the town mayor first. You two sit tight. The staff rushed out as if they were sprinting 100 meters. Kerbin, the mayor of the oil town, leaned back in his chair, ready to take a break. The oil town primarily consists of a floating population, making it easy for conflicts to arise due to differing customs and habits. He had just dealt with a dispute and felt a bit tired, planning to rest for a moment. Just as he was about to sit up and review some documents, the office door was suddenly slammed open. It startled him, causing the pen in his hand to drop onto the desk. When he saw who had entered, he was immediately filled with anger. Majidi, what are you doing? Making such a fuss. If something were to happen to me, you'd be taking care of the rest of your life. Come on, with your good health, that's not happening. The staff member chuckled. It seemed they often joked like this. Stop wasting time, just tell me what happened. Kerbin glared at him and picked up his pen, ready to continue reviewing the documents. Mayor, someone wants to rent our town's desert. So what? Just rent it, why the fuss? Didn't the oil company rent it before? Just take the contract and sign it. The price remains the same. Do you know how much they want to rent? 10,000 acres. For 30 years. 1.5 billion. Majidi exclaimed. Kurban immediately jumped up from his chair. Where are they? I want to meet them. They're in the office having tea. I'll take you there. As they entered, they saw Dongfang and Nova standing by the wall, pointing at the administrative division map. Upon hearing someone come in, Dongfang turned around to look at the newcomers. He looked like a typical man from the northwest, with a bushy beard and a tall stature. He extended his hand as soon as they walked in. Hello. I don't know how to address you two yet. I'm Kurban, the mayor of the town. Hello, Mayor Kurban. I'm Dongfang, and this is my assistant Nova. He shook hands with the man. I heard you want to lease 10,000 acres of sandy land. Is that true? Of course, if we can sign the contract now. We'll transfer the payment right after. Dongfang nodded, and Nova took a check out of his small bag and handed it to the bearded man. Mayor, the contract is ready. Majidi, who had just received Dongfang and Nova, walked in with a stack of documents. Could you please provide the full name of your company? Just to confirm, it's the sandy land 2 kilometers east of the town, along the highway, 25 kilometers long and 25 kilometers wide, right? After saying that, he took out a pen and leaned over the desk to finalize the contract. Yes, the full name of the company is Blue Star High-Tech Greening Company, Limited. Nova opened his mouth, stating a company name that had just been registered at noon. The mayor pulled Majidi aside. Have you checked everything? No problem. Just like with the oil company, both parties have clear responsibilities and obligations. If you're worried, you can take a look. Kurban carefully looked over the contract he received. After confirming that there were no omissions, he gritted his teeth and signed his name. With this money, the county and town would have ample funds. Just wait and see who would dare to mock him now. They would call him the town head. After seeing the two out, Kurban shakily picked up the check placed on the table. 1.5 billion. Has it really come to this? He still found it hard to believe. However, he had a way to confirm it. He twisted his arm hard, and upon hearing a scream from Majidi, he nodded seriously. It's not fake. He then took out his phone, walking toward the office while dialing. Sir, the check you mentioned is real. You can go to the bank to cash it anytime. Okay, I understand. Thank you. After hanging up the phone, he gave the check a hard kiss. Wealthy people really know how to play. Dongfang and Nova exited and drove towards the outskirts of the town. 2 kilometers from the oil town, in the center of the sandy area just rented by Dongfang. A blue light flashed, and a transport ship appeared on the dunes. The hatch opened, and a line of bionic robots walked down from the ship's deck. A few transport vehicles also rolled out. The robots picked up construction materials from the vehicles, driving metal poles into the sand to complete the foundation. Then, construction robots entered, leveling the sand dune and laying down uniform metal plates. Soon, a metal platform, 100 meters long and wide, appeared in the desert. The transport ship started again, docking its deck onto the completed metal platform. Construction robots moved out again, spraying a gray insulating coating on the platform's surface. They then constructed a warehouse approximately 45 meters long and 20 meters wide. While the robots continued their busy work, a blue light flashed at the edge of the platform, and an all-terrain vehicle drove onto the platform. The doors opened, and Dongfang and Nova stepped down. The robots seemed oblivious to the two, continuing their tasks on the platform. Dongfang stood aside, watching as these robots completed the construction of a 2-story villa at a visible speed. Once the construction was finished, they immediately brought in various decorations and renovation materials into the villa. Dongfang withdrew his gaze and walked to the now completed warehouse. Inside, a large number of metal plates were stacked, engraved with various functional patterns. Nova, are these patterns on the metal plates incomplete? Dongfang pointed to the stacked metals in the warehouse. Yes, Your Excellency, they only lack the final engraving to activate. Good job. Dongfang looked over the equipment list that Nova had brought, nodding in satisfaction. Nova had prepared thoroughly this time, with the quantity of all types of equipment at the upper limit of Dongfang's requests. After reviewing the list, he strolled around the warehouse, touching this and trying that. He was just bored. Captain, the villa is complete. Nova watched Dongfang, who was carefully studying the functions of the automatic seeder, and reminded him that if he didn't speak up soon, the captain would probably take the vehicle out for a spin. So soon? Dongfang replied. Then let's go take a look. I'm a bit hungry. Let's have a whole roasted lamb at the villa. The newly renovated villa had been built with specially made eco-friendly materials, so there was not a hint of an unpleasant odor. The villa was brightly lit, with only 2 robots remaining inside. One was setting the table and preparing drinks, while the other was in the kitchen, skewering a lamb on a specially designed rack for roasting. Dongfang definitely overate during that meal. So late at night, he put on a thick cotton coat and walked around the platform repeatedly. The breath he exhaled formed a visible cloud in the cold desert night. The next day, at 6 a.m., Dongfang opened his eyes on time. He glanced out the window, only to find darkness outside. Oh right, I forgot about this. It was still bright out last night at 10 p.m. It wasn't until 9 a.m. that Dongfang finally got out of bed, after having breakfast prepared by Nova. He drove his all-terrain vehicle to the only nursery in town. A young man was dozing off in a chair, likely still feeling the effects of the previous night's festivities. Hey buddy, do you have any saplings? The young man immediately opened his eyes, realizing there was business to be had. Of course, I specialize in selling saplings. What do you want? What do you have? I have red willows. The young man replied, then paused. Anything else? That's all I have for now. What? No tamarisk or poplar. Those are sold out. Right now, I only have red willows. Then what do you want me to ask for? Oh, it's just a habit. My apologies. How many do you have? Dongfang had calmed down. The young man's attitude was quite good, offering him cigarettes and water. However, red willows were indeed more suitable for the Taklamakan desert. Right now, it's winter, so I only have 50 saplings, which I grew in the greenhouse. Dongfang suddenly realized that the daytime temperature in the desert was too high. He had forgotten it was winter, which explained the lack of other saplings. What's the price? If it's cheap, I'll take them all. Of course, they're cheap. Each one is 20 yuan. They're all over 20 centimeters tall and come with soil balls. Do you want them? As if Dongfang was short on money. After making the payment via scan, he took the saplings and drove away. Money is easy to make. Today is a lucky day. The young man stood by the roadside to see him off. Memorizing Dongfang's vehicle number. He must be a big boss. The trunk couldn't fit all the saplings, so he stacked them in the back seat. Not even caring that it was a new vehicle. Will this kind of person help with desertification? The young man flashed a bright smile, knowing that the saplings would surely be in demand in the future. No, I need to get more saplings. Little did Dongfang know, others viewed him as a cash cow, planning to take advantage of him in the long run. Soon, Dongfang returned to his desert base. The robot walked out of the warehouse and quickly moved the red willow seedlings back inside, organizing them properly. Nova, let's set up a seedling center. The East had already anticipated this situation and was well prepared. The transport ship landed once again. Following the previous steps, a platform was rebuilt and connected to the original one. A seedling center appeared on the new platform. This seedling center was designed by the East, with a large metal frame in the center of the greenhouse, holding transparent boxes that were connected by clear tubes. Above each box, about 50 centimeters high, there was a small metal plate, and at the bottom, a metal plate of the same size as the box's base. The boxes were filled with a slightly green liquid. Each box had a lid with a hole in the center, approximately 15 centimeters in diameter. Along the wall of the greenhouse, the area was divided into square plots of 1 square meter each. However, currently, only 50 plots had plants growing in them. Specifically the red willow seedlings that the East had purchased not long ago. Yuan, instruct all departments and subsidiaries to continue executing the original plan. I have something big to do and won't be returning to the company for a while. By the way, there's no rush on the aerospace base. Focus on personnel and technical reserves first, the East said as he walked into the seedling center with his phone. Chairman, you have such a big heart. This is your company, not mine. But if you trust me, I will take good care of it and do exactly as you say. Haha, Yuan, with you here, I feel at ease. What kind of relationship do we have? Just like brothers. Oh, I'm busy. Just have the secretary send me daily reports. Hang up. The East hung up the phone and quickly walked over to the red willow he had planted yesterday. Wow, this must be 30 centimeters tall now. The effect of the treatment is surprisingly good. We can start large-scale propagation. Chapter 133. The greenhouse. This was just the effect after 5 hours. The red willow had grown from 20 centimeters to over 30 centimeters. After a few more hours, the cuttings could be taken. The East stood up from the edge of the plot. He had more things to do. He needed to create a perfect cover for his actions. Exiting the seedling center, he drove his car to the roadside. He didn't wait long. A few minutes later, 2 semi-trailer trucks stopped beside him. The doors opened, and 4 robots indistinguishable from humans jumped down. Just then, a fuel tanker truck happened to pass by. Hey, look, what are these people up to? Is it another oil company? Our exploration results show that there's no oil here. As the vehicles passed, the person in the passenger seat saw that the tarp of the trailer was lifted, revealing stacks of cement and other construction materials. So they're building something. The townspeople must know about it. Let's go back and ask. After unloading fuel and inquiring a bit, they learned the whole situation. It turned out to be the hottest topic in town. A big boss was coming to combat desertification. This was the second largest shifting sand desert in the world. How much money does one need to dare to do such things? So, while feeling curious, more attention was drawn to that empty space. The individual had no idea they had become the focus of the town. At that moment, they were busy with their roadside residents. After the fuel truck passed, more people got off 2 trailers. They were carrying various construction materials and equipment, stacking them along the roadside sand barriers. Once everything was ready, they immediately began the foundation work. 10 hours later, a 2-story building stood proudly by the road. The individual stood in the square, gazing towards the horizon. Although it was already 10 p.m., the sun had just set. A few clouds floated in the sky, glowing a bright red, swaying gently with the breeze. The desert appeared to be draped in a layer of red gauze, stretching endlessly until the eye could see. Robots had all shifted their work location, constructing a wall in the sandy area. So beautiful, they exclaimed. Yes, Your Excellency. Nova appeared behind them. How is the red willow? The individual didn't turn around, as they were captivated by the view. It's currently being propagated. It should be ready by tomorrow morning. Let's start laying the functional panels tonight. But Your Excellency, the wall isn't completed yet. Nova pointed to the workers who were busy building the wall in the sandy area. It's okay. As long as we finish the side facing the road to block the view, we can deal with the rest later. We might even need to rent more land. Nova nodded. After dinner, the individual stood on the platform looking out at the desert. The spacecraft used for exploring Maya hovered over the sandy ground. One stationed in each direction. They emitted a blue light that enveloped the sandy area. If viewed from the road, only the newly built two-story building was brightly lit. Beneath the optical invisibility shield, however, were numerous busy robots. Large bulldozing robots were at the front, flattening the sand dunes one by one. Following them was a road-laying machine, continuously placing metal plates every 5 meters on the flattened sand. Behind it were smaller engineering robots, firing lasers from their eyes, etching the final details of the functional panels onto the laid metal plates. A small water droplet quickly floated above the metal plates. Finally, the paver followed, taking sand from the nearby dunes to cover the metal plates and smooth the surface. From the individual's vantage point, all that could be seen was the sand dunes being transformed into exceptionally flat ground. However, upon closer inspection, differences could still be noticed. The sand had become very moist, no longer loose enough to slide away with a mere touch. On the vast sandy ground, hundreds of machines worked simultaneously, creating an incredibly spectacular scene. And the progress of the project was astonishing. Soon, the installation of the metal plates was fully completed. The large machinery withdrew, and engineering robots transported a significant amount of construction materials to the surroundings of the platform. The East yawned and said, Nova, I'm feeling a bit drowsy. Let's check again in the morning. You should go rest. By the time the East woke up, the robots had already constructed 5 new greenhouses, each 300 meters long and 35 meters wide. These greenhouses looked no different from those used by people in the northern regions for growing vegetables. They certainly didn't appear to be built by robots. If someone walked into the greenhouse, they would discover that it was equipped with a fully automated irrigation system, along with some metal plates adorned with patterns. Even the walls of the greenhouse had these patterned metal plates, spaced a few meters apart. This was the new greenhouse designed by the East. However, it was strange that the irrigation system was built quite low, with the drip irrigation pipes only 30 centimeters off the ground, and the metal plates were welded at an angle onto the irrigation pipes, just covering about 20 centimeters of the ground. This way, sunlight could still reach the surface. Have you found a way to control the fireplate? The East wondered, looking at the fireplate that hadn't produced any flames all night. Yes, I found the control for the yawn while you were resting yesterday. But it seems to only control the fireplate and water plate, so I didn't disturb your rest, Nova nodded. Nova truly was a super intelligent brain. While controlling the robots, it still had ample computing power for research at the underwater base. It's already impressive. I believe that with further research, we will soon master all of the yawn, the East said. Let us go check the seedling center. The East was aware that as more yawn was mastered, the pace of research would undoubtedly accelerate until all the secrets of yawn were revealed. The East chuckled and turned back to the platform. In the seedling center, the metal frame was filled with transparent boxes containing branches. The branches extended through the round holes in the middle of the boxes, adorned with tender green leaves. The roots at the bottom filled the boxes completely. The seedling center was vibrant with life. The East loved the sight before him. Although the vast desert was filled with exotic charm, he preferred a touch of green, as it represented life. Captain, we have completed the cultivation of the first batch of 5,000 seedlings and can transplant them into the greenhouses for expansion. Nova reported in detail about the progress of the seedlings while standing beside the East. Looking up, the East noticed that the 50 red willows planted against the wall had sprouted green buds again. It seemed that as long as they were within the range of the life plate S effect, these red willows would surely survive. Can we really produce 5,000 seedlings in just 2 days? The East turned to Nova. As the number of seedlings continues to increase, this quantity will further rise. Moreover, once they mature, they will produce seeds, so we can start large-scale planting in 10 days. The East nodded, feeling that the seedling issue was resolved. Chapter 134. Wild camels, then what are we waiting for? Let us begin our tree planting venture. The East shouted, put on his gloves, walked to the seedling box, and took out a red willow. As he walked into the greenhouse, a wave of heat hit him. However, due to the ample moisture, it wasn't particularly uncomfortable. After all, it was a greenhouse, and with just a few trees planted, he was already sweating profusely. Nova, don't you feel the heat? He took off his shirt, leaving just a tank top, revealing solid muscles. It seemed the dual training method was indeed effective. The surface sensors indicate a rise in temperature, but I don't know what heat is. Nova looked up, showing a puzzled expression. All right. I keep forgetting you're just a robot. Let's continue planting trees. He took the water bottle handed to him by the bionic robot and took a big gulp. Then he lowered his head and resumed his tree planting endeavor. Captain, do you really not need the robot's help? Of course, with just 5,000 saplings, it's just enough to warm up. Just have them deliver the saplings. How can I, as a sand control expert, not plant trees? He said firmly before immediately bending down to pick up another sapling. I have to say, his physical condition is quite impressive. After an hour and a half, he had completed the planting of 500 red willows. However, he had already consumed half a bucket of water. Sweat flowed down him like rain, splashing onto the sandy ground. Nova spoke up again. Captain, why not let them help? It would be faster. No need. Look, I've already planted 500. He insisted. How can I back down? Even if I'm exhausted, I must finish what I started. But with 500 saplings left, when will I be done? After resting for a while, he picked up another sapling and began digging pits, placing the saplings and backfilling. After repeating this 500 times, he had become very skilled at it. Nova, look at this speed. Since he had just rested, he seemed particularly relaxed. All right. You're the captain, you're always right. The desert town was bustling today. Early in the morning, a fleet of buses drove in, and as a staff member of the town's government, Majidi received the news immediately, without even washing his face. He rushed to the bus to see what these people were here for. Soon, he noticed a man in a suit organizing the crowd. He quickly approached. Hello. I'm a staff member from the town government office. The man in the suit extended his hand for a handshake. Hello. I'm from Blue Star High-Tech Greening Company. Limited, nice to meet you. May I ask why so many of you have come to the desert town? You know, we have a transient population here, so we need to register clearly to prevent any issues. We're here for sand control. Didn't our boss come to rent a piece of land a few days ago? Majidi suddenly realized it was that person who had called them. Oh, I see. How many people have come? Once I register you, you can go rent the land. There are a total of 450 people. Here is the list. The man in the suit was well prepared and took out a stack of documents from his briefcase. Majidi took a look at the registration, which was clear and straightforward, with everyone's names and ID numbers recorded. All right, no problem. You carry on with your work. You know the location of the land rented by Mr. Dong, right? Of course. The man in the suit nodded, feeling hungry. We'll leave after lunch. Majidi didn't say anything else, took the list, and returned to the office. Mayor, look at this. 450 people showed up at once. This big boss seems serious. He slapped the list onto the mayor's desk, looking proud. The mayor stroked his beard and took a closer look at the list. Wow. People from all over have gathered in such a short time. All right, you keep following up. If this really succeeds in combating desertification, it would be a great benefit to the country and the people. The man in the suit, of course. Couldn't he know about the conversation between the two at the town government? His job was quite simple. He just needed to take these robots around the town to let everyone know. So he took all the robots on a leisurely tour around the town. Once everyone knew that these were workers hired by the big boss for desertification efforts, he quickly left the small town. Captain, they are almost here. Should we wait for them to start planting? Looking at the Sokdong, Nova suggested for the third time. All right. As soon as the two finished speaking, the robots pushed open the greenhouse door and walked in. They didn't say a word and went straight to the saplings, picking them up and starting to plant. Dong, panting, sat on the side watching these robots, who had no concept of fatigue, begin their strange planting. The mechanical arm turned into a whirlwind shovel, poking into the sandy ground to create a large pit with a 50 centimeters diameter. Another mechanical arm picked up a sapling and gently placed it inside. The whirlwind shovel transformed into a round bucket, encircling the sapling, and gently closed to refill the pit with the sand that was just tossed out. Then, with one more press down, the planting of the sapling was immediately completed. The whole process took only about a minute, with 450 robots. They finished planting what Dong would take an hour and a half to complete in one go. Nova, it seems I'm wasting my time. Dong didn't care about the sand on the ground anymore and lay flat. Nova nodded in agreement. Actually, you should use your intellect instead of engaging in high-intensity physical labor. All right, help me up, my legs are a bit weak. Two robots approached and helped Dong up. This time, he completed his washing with the assistance of the robots. That embarrassing scene, Dong vowed, would never happen again. Early the next morning, Dong opened his eyes at 600 as usual. He heard something banging against the surrounding wall. Nova, what is that noise? Captain, you're awake. I'm not sure at the moment. After you rested yesterday, I returned to the underwater base. I think we should migrate the base for the second time. Human technology is advancing continuously. There are now deep-sea submersibles. So I returned to the base and am currently dismantling all the buildings. Really? Dong felt a jolt, fully awake. Which country? It is from a certain country, and their newly developed deep-sea dragon detector was tested nearby yesterday. Wow, has our nation become so powerful? Well, I want to move the base to the far side of the moon. Is that possible? Of course, we are the Starry Fleet, and it's more suitable for us there. Then I will prepare and return to the desert later. By the way, the sound is coming from a wild camel. It is injured. Would you like to take a look? Nova transmitted images back, and the individual saw a little camel covered in sand bumping against the metal wall of the greenhouse. All right, I'll go take a look. Once everything is ready, we will start the base relocation. After all, I've never been to the moon, so it will be an eye-opener. Nova disappeared from view, and the individual got up to get dressed. Chapter 135. The white-haired one. When the individual arrived at the greenhouse wall, they saw the camel staring wide-eyed, preparing to charge at the robot. They quickly walked over, intending to touch the little camel's head. Unexpectedly, the camel tilted its head and pointed it at the individual, treating them as the main target. The individual quickly took 2 steps back, hands raised to indicate no harm. The camel, showing high intelligence, stopped upon seeing the individual's gesture. It lifted its left hoof and waved it towards the individual. It turned out its leg was injured. Upon closer inspection, the individual noticed the little camel's left front hoof was oddly twisted. After showing this, the little camel pressed its front hoof against the greenhouse wall and began moving it side to side, seemingly searching for something. Feeling it was ineffective, it started to bump its head against the outer wall of the greenhouse. The individual recalled that there was a life panel embedded in the wall. Would this help with its injury? Go get a life panel. The individual turned to the robot beside them. After a while, the robot returned with a life panel. As soon as the little camel saw the life panel, it immediately stopped bumping against the wall, stumbling over to the robot. Its big round eyes fixed intently on the metal panel. The individual took the life panel and placed it on the sand. The little camel immediately put its left front hoof on it. Soon, a look of relief appeared in its eyes. The individual was astonished. It seemed the life panel had a very good effect on healing bones. Go get some splints as well. The robot returned again, handing over some strips of cloth and several long wooden pieces. The individual took them and reached for the little camel's left hoof. The little camel seemed to understand the individual's intention, so even though it was in pain, its face showed a pained expression but did not move an inch. Therefore, the individual quickly secured it, placing the front hoof on the life panel. The little camel relaxed even more and lay down. It just rested its front hoof on the metal panel, eyes squinted as if enjoying it immensely. Seeing this, the individual felt the little camel would be fine. They then asked the robot to bring a basin and a box of milk. When the milk basin was placed near the little camel's mouth, it immediately extended its tongue and began licking the basin eagerly as if it really liked it. Haha, not bad. The individual stood up. You stay here and keep an eye on it. Report anything immediately. Since Nova is not around, Dongfeng still feels a bit unaccustomed, so he specifically instructed the robot. At your command, Captain. The robot remained motionless in place. Dongfeng then entered the seedling center once again. The 5,000 red willows from yesterday had all been transplanted into the greenhouse, and overnight, new red willow branches were replanted in all the seedling boxes, with green buds visibly sprouting at a rapid pace. After leaving the seedling center, Dongfeng glanced at the sky, which was still pitch black. So he returned to the villa for a quick nap. By 9 o'clock a.m., the sky was bright, and the sun was hanging right on time. The sky was a deep blue, without a single cloud. The temperature in the desert quickly rose. The robots had already begun the transplantation work. Soon, another 5 trailers stopped by the roadside. The second batch of building materials had arrived, and the dormitory construction at the sand control base was about to begin. It made sense. After all, it would be unrealistic for hundreds of people to have no place to stay. Currently, they were all living in tents. So soon, the sandy area transformed into a large construction site. The sound of machinery roared, and the robots moved back and forth, creating a lively atmosphere. The young camel was recovering well. By the time Dongfeng approached it, it was already lively and energetic. However, since a splint was still tied to its front hoof, its movements were not very agile. It was pushing down a piece of cloth with its head and right hoof, while the robot stood beside it, looking somewhat confused. Dongfeng smiled. After all, a robot is just a robot. It only executes predetermined commands, which is a stark contrast to Nova. He reached out once again to grasp the young camel's front hoof. The young camel finally calmed down, blinking its big eyes and staring at Dongfeng without moving. Dongfeng quickly removed the splint and carefully felt its bones. It had completely healed. This ability is truly remarkable. Remarkable is an understatement for life. It should be called extraordinary. Dongfeng reached out to pat the young camel's head, and it actively leaned in, rubbing against his palm. Let me give you a bath. Dongfeng retracted his hand, looking at the sand all over it, and couldn't help but have an idea. The robot immediately pulled out a water hose from the greenhouse and handed it to Dongfang. He tested the temperature with his hand. It was just right. Dongfang then picked up a brush, watering the young camel while brushing its fur. The young camel remained still, comfortably enjoying Dongfang's service. As Dongfang worked, all the sand was washed away. The young camel revealed its pure white fur. Dongfang was shocked, in the eyes of the locals. A white-furred camel represents great fortune. It is a messenger of the divine among people, and even in the face of the fiercest sandstorms, it would not be in danger. Seeing the young camel covered in sand reminded Dongfang of the sandstorm from the night before last. The sand control base is protected by a shield, so no sand has blown in. However, outside the shield in the desert, the sand is overwhelming, making it nearly impossible to see the sky. It is remarkable that it survived in such harsh conditions. Little one, where are your dad and mom? The white camel remained silent, gazing towards the east, then shook its body vigorously, splattering water droplets all over the eastern figure. Noticing the gloomy expression on the eastern figure's face, it bared its teeth and pulled a comical smile, as if to say, "Do I look like I can talk?" The eastern figure slapped their head. Realizing they were talking to a camel, there was no choice but to offer a second bowl of milk. After finishing, the little camel stood up. The outdoor temperature was rising quickly, and its fur had dried completely, pure white with no mixed colors, its big round eyes wide open. It turned to run outside. But after a short distance, it stopped and looked back at the eastern figure. The eastern figure smiled and waved. "Go ahead. Come back if you want more milk." As if understanding the words, the little camel turned its head and continued running outside, soon disappearing into the sand. The eastern figure watched it leave and walked into the greenhouse to check on the progress of the red willow transplantation. At that moment, Nova appeared before him. "Captain, the dismantling of the base has been completed and the starship is fully powered. We expect to initiate the second relocation at 10 p.m. tonight. Please give your instructions." "So soon? There's no time like the present. Let's start the relocation tonight." Chapter 136. The ruins on the moon's far side on January 10th, 2023, at 10 p.m. Above the Taklamakan Desert, the sun stubbornly hung in the sky, casting a red veil over the sand dunes. Apart from the greenhouse in front of him, there was no sign of life, making the landscape particularly desolate. The eastern figure stood on the platform, carefully observing everything. He silently set a goal for himself, to transform the sand control base into an oasis in the desert, then to continuously extend it until all the desert becomes fertile land. A shuttle with blue light flashed and appeared above the eastern figure. A small anti-gravity lift precisely landed at his feet. He stepped on it, and the transparent railing rose, allowing him to lean back comfortably. He entered the shuttle. "Captain, we'll meet in low Earth orbit." Nova's image appeared before him just as he sat down. "No rush. I want to take another look at the underwater base. After all, it's our first base." "Understood. I'll await your arrival." The call ended, and the shuttle vanished into thin air above the desert. Sitting in the shuttle, the eastern figure activated the real-time viewing mode. The cabin disappeared, and it felt as though he was sitting in the ocean. A nearby jellyfish glowed faintly, its bell pulsating as it gently swam forward, continuously attracting microorganisms for it to enjoy. The east was once again captivated, transitioning from a lifeless desert to a vibrant seabed. The stark contrast leaving him in awe. Minutes later, the shuttle arrived above the underwater base. The east looked down at the seabed, which had been completely dismantled, resembling its initial arrival at the seabed, as if the base had never existed here. "Nova, has everything been taken apart?" "No. The fully automated processing center and the storage facility for bionic robots are still intact." As Nova's words fell, blue arcs of electricity contracted, revealing the automated processing center and the robot storage facility before the east size. "This is prepared for you, as it's relatively close to your country. In case of emergencies, there are 2,000 bionic robots stored in the warehouse, enough to handle everything." "Then let us go?" The starship automatically opened its hatch, and as the shuttle glided in, the hatch immediately closed. They began to ascend to the surface. The east entered the bridge and took the captain's seat, anticipating his first journey. Nova stood charmingly beside him, waving her small hand. A holographic screen appeared before the east. The endless sea surface appeared on the screen. As the ship's altitude increased, the sea surface shrank continuously. The east could already see land emerging in the image, gradually getting smaller, currently at an altitude of 40,000 meters. Nova whispered a report in his ear. The image had transformed into an arc, and the east could see a massive spherical shape. As the starship's speed further increased, the east could even see debris from satellites in low Earth orbit. "Are these all satellites launched by humanity?" Minutes later, a dense cluster of space debris appeared before the east's eyes. "Yes, Captain. Over the years, humanity has continuously launched satellites, and their operational lifespan is limited. When they can no longer be used, they are abandoned here, orbiting the blue planet endlessly." Just as Nova finished speaking, a thick laser shot out from the top of the starship, vaporizing all the debris in its path into powder. A direct passage to the moon appeared ahead of the starship. Haha, we've become garbage collectors today? Let us head to the moon. The moon had come into view, and the East excitedly stretched out his arm, pointing at it. There was no need for complex maneuvers or escape acceleration. The engines at the rear of the starship lit up instantly, pulling the ship into a streak of blue light, disappearing into the starry sky. Nova, how long until we reach the moon? The blue planet is 3.84 million kilometers from the moon. At our current speed, we will arrive in 15 seconds. So fast. 30,000 kilometers per second? To reach such a high speed in such a short time? Yes, this is just the effect of activating the ion thruster. If we activate the curvature engine, we can arrive in just 13 seconds. While the East and Nova were conversing, the starship had already reached the far side of the moon. The area was shrouded in darkness, and even with all the lights of the starship on, only a portion of the ground was visible. For countless millennia, numerous meteors had fallen on the lunar surface, creating a pockmarked terrain. Countless craters displayed the unique landscape of the far side of the moon. As the holographic camera scanned the area, a structure was spotted. What was that? Nova. He pointed to what appeared to be the remnants of a building and turned to the robot beside him. With a tap of his finger, the location resembling artificial construction was immediately magnified. It must be the ruins of a man-made structure. Nova's voice echoed. Oriental tapped the image again, revealing the building in exquisite detail, with doors, windows, and steps all clearly visible. It was indeed a structure created by humans. Its style was reminiscent of Mayan architecture. Captain, this should be the transit base mentioned by the Mayans. Nova quickly retrieved images from the storage. The spacecraft would head to the transit base, where a large ship was still stored. You can pilot it back home. A Maya, wearing a mask and holding a golden scepter, appeared in the corner of the holographic image. Let's go take a look. Oriental pointed at the artificial structure. The starship slowly descended over the remnants of the building. The hatch opened, and a team of robots along with several mechs began to disembark. Nova, can the first-generation mech replace a spacesuit? I want to go down and take a look. Of course, its performance far exceeds that of a spacesuit. After hearing Nova's affirmative response, Oriental pressed a buckle on his belt. Liquid metal quickly spread over his body. The visor descended, and Oriental pushed open the hatch, jumping out. Nova followed closely behind. Oriental felt like a human balloon, wobbling as he landed on the lunar surface. Due to the low gravity, the dust kicked up by his feet fell slowly, almost in slow motion. Curious, Oriental bent down to watch the dust drift down, reaching out to catch some. Satisfied, he stood up and tossed the dust away. Haha, this is so much fun. He then pushed off with his left foot, launching himself into the air like an arrow. He would fall back down, then soar up again. Nova, I feel like if I fully activate the thrusters, I could break free from the moon's grasp. That might be unlikely, Captain. Nova stood still, grinning as he watched Oriental bounce around on the moon. You're really good at this. Chapter 137. Encountering the force field again when Oriental finished his bouncing activities. 20 minutes had already passed. He gently landed next to Nova, grinning as he spoke. Nova, do you want to play too? Don't be shy. I'm waiting for you. Captain, I played a long time ago, so. The robots had all entered the ruins and completed their search, but unfortunately, everything here was already damaged. What about the ship? It should have already taken off. We searched all the buildings and found nothing, only the wreckage of a small spacecraft, similar to the one you piloted in the temple, with no research value. This result was anticipated by Dongfang beforehand, given the dilapidated state of the building. It was normal not to find much. However, he thought of another key point. Did you notice that palm-shaped groove? After hesitating for a moment, Dongfang finally asked. Nova did not respond immediately, and wore an expression as if he wanted to say something, but held back. There is indeed a discovery. Yes, Captain. Nova finally spoke up. There is an ancient saying in a certain country. A gentleman does not stand under a dangerous wall, so please think carefully. Dongfang hesitated as well. Reflecting on his previous encounter, he still felt a bit uneasy. But the robot was unable to enter, and the situation fell into a deadlock. Let's go take a look first. Nova nodded and led the way into the ruins. This structure had likely existed for over 2,000 years. But due to lack of protection, it was now quite ruined. The broken roof and walls that seemed on the verge of collapse told the story of everything that had happened here. An asteroid struck here. Nova pointed to a large pit ahead. Dongfang hurried a few steps and saw the meteorite that had broken through the roof. It seemed that without atmospheric protection, the moon was quite vulnerable to meteorite impacts. Yes, it can also be considered a shield for the blue planet. Who knows how many meteorite impacts it has blocked? Dongfang carefully observed the stone in front of him. Unlike the meteorites on the blue planet that had been scorched by the atmosphere and appeared charred, the meteorite in the middle of the room still retained its rocky appearance. Perhaps because it contained a lot of iron, it remained intact. It wasn't shattered into pieces. And when the light shone on it, a faint metallic luster was reflected. Nova, let's refine a meteorite sword. Dongfang looked excitedly at the robot in front. Sure, after all, you are the captain, but I must inform you in advance that its sharpness is just average. If we use the nanometal materials from the planetary ring. Never mind, based on what I've read in novels, possessing a meteorite sword will make one a hero. I want to give it a try. Dongfang laughed heartily. Where's that groove? It's underground in the room. Dongfang and Nova bypassed the meteorite pit and descended the steps into the depths of the room. Two palm-shaped indentations were prominently displayed on the wall at the end. The area had been cleaned by the robot, so it looked quite tidy. Dongfang stood in front of the wall and hesitated again. What if a light gate appeared and sucked him in? Space is not like the blue planet. If the oxygen carried by the mech runs out, it would be a dead end. But if the wall in front of him was merely a door, it might lead to even greater discoveries. It would be a tremendous boost for in-depth research on Yan. With that thought, Dongfang set aside his doubts and raised his hand to press against the wall. Captain, please wait a moment. We brought the starship with us this time. Nova suddenly remembered something. We can conduct a full-scale scan first. Yes, Dongfang suddenly realized. This wasn't like the last time underwater. The grooves before him captivated his attention completely, making him forget about the starship. Soon, real-time scanning images were transmitted into his view. The structures on the lunar surface were nothing special, just a pile of construction debris. However, behind the room where he was, there was indeed another space. It seemed to be a door without a doubt, with no worries behind him. He quickly pressed his hand against it. A slight vibration was felt, and dust continuously fell from the walls. The originally tightly sealed wall opened in the middle. Circular and square metal platforms reappeared before him. Just as he was about to step forward, Nova reached out and grabbed the corner of his clothing. You're too anxious, Nova said. After that, several robots descended the steps and headed straight for the open door. But they couldn't enter. Instead, they experienced the same situation as when they entered the temple and were pushed back out. Another repulsive field? Yes, Captain. It seems we have to wait a little longer. More robots surged into the basement, holding a power tower directly aimed at the open doorway. This time, the robots successfully walked inside. Dongfang and Nova stood at the entrance. Looking in, the robot's perspective also appeared in Dongfang's view. The inside was small, only about 50 square meters, similar to the underground space of the temple, with many square metal blocks arranged around. In the middle was the circular metal block that Dongfang had used. The ground was engraved with symbols, glowing faintly in blue light. Captain, these symbols should be related to the force field, Nova said after carefully studying the patterns on the ground. Dongfang nodded. It seems there is no danger. Let's go in. Since there was no danger, Nova naturally would not obstruct him further. So, Dongfang walked in on his own. Upon entering, he headed straight for the square metal platform against the wall and pressed the triangular button on top. A blue light flashed, and the central circular metal platform displayed a holographic image of the moon. The square metal platform showed a vast array of symbols. Nova, you know the symbols. Come take a look. This is a computer of the Maya. Nova's face lit up with joy, finally solving a mystery. How could the Maya accomplish such massive calculations without a computer? I originally thought they relied on blueprints left by their ancestors when they arrived on this planet. It seems they just didn't want to leave any traces here. What about that metal circular platform? That's just a display terminal, but the control system is worth further study. This is a completely different technological system from what we know. The unique functional boards, like the life board and fireboard, had him drooling. He had been unable to delve deeply into the foundational subjects of the symbols due to the lack of a complete information system, even with limited use. The various astonishing technologies exhibited by the Maya civilization were like miracles, leaving one utterly enchanted. Move out, everyone move out. With a wave of his hand, Dongfang exuded an imposing aura. Chapter 138, Rebuilding the Base Before Long. The underground space was cleared completely, leaving only the inscriptions on the ground. Nova, why are the inscriptions effective even when the Maya carved them into stone? Dongfang squatted down and tapped the ground, confirming it was just a stone. There is nothing special about it. After all, our understanding of the fundamentals is still lacking. Looking at the Maya's application methods, these inscriptions should be usable on any material, right? Even, as you mentioned, they could be drawn on skin? Uncertainty flickered in Nova's eyes. Then let's continue the research. These inscriptions on the ground should be related to the force field, right? Yes, they are. After Nova finished speaking, he took a metal plate just delivered from the robot's hand and swiftly moved his finger across it. Sparks flew as he completed the engraving of the inscription. Dongfang placed his hand on it, but unfortunately felt nothing. Why doesn't it block me? Dongfang flipped his hand back and forth, showing no signs of being obstructed by the force field. Could it be? Nova reached out to touch the patterns, but unfortunately, he couldn't get any closer than 20 centimeters from the metal plate. Still skeptical, Nova tried multiple times, but the result remained the same. Dongfang felt nothing in response. The Maya's inscriptions still hold secrets. We need to study them more deeply. Nova seemed deflated as he pulled his hand away from the metal plate, handing it over to the nearby robot. Haha, it turns out this force field has no effect on living beings. Dongfang laughed heartily. Let us go. We've taken what we need here. It's time to build a new base. As Dongfang exited the ruins, the grand construction of the base was already in full swing. This construction still followed Dongfang's design. However, because it was on the moon, where gravity is only 1/5 of that on Earth, all the robots became incredibly strong. They lifted metal components several times larger than their own bodies with remarkable ease, moving with exceptional agility. Nova, why aren't we leveling the ground? Look, Nova pointed. And the top of the starship shot out a thick laser, sending countless dust particles flying, obscuring everything in the area. Dongfang tilted his head in confusion at Nova. But Nova remained unaffected, seemingly waiting for something. Sure enough, the starship shot out another beam, capturing all the dust, then redirecting it, turning the dust into large stones neatly stacked next to the metal components being moved by the robots. As the dust settled, the ground was left incredibly flat, as if it had been compressed. Atomic synthesis beam? Dongfang understood immediately. Yes, it seems your knowledge of starships isn't solid enough. Nova chuckled softly, covering her mouth. This is an essential tool for navigating through the dense asteroid belt. Dongfang laughed awkwardly, scratching his head. He recalled the lessons from teacher Arthur. This was an instrument used in conjunction with focusing lasers. After the laser sweep, materials were immediately broken down into granular forms. By synthesizing light, it could capture the particles within range and recombine them into the desired shapes by the operator. Theoretically, it could synthesize any known material. But given the technological level of the planet, this concept has yet to be realized. Therefore, dust could only be transformed into rocks. However, for the establishment of a base on the far side of the moon, it significantly accelerated the construction process. After leveling the ground, the starship's hatch opened again. Countless robots flew out from the ship's door, landing on the freshly leveled surface. The ship's laser had removed about 10 meters of weathered soil from the lunar surface, resulting in an incredibly flat ground that even reflected light like glass due to the high temperatures. Nova, do we have the analysis results for the lunar soil? Dongfang asked, noticing something unusual. We already have them. The main component of the lunar soil is silicon dioxide, making up about 45% of the total minerals. Notably, there is a large amount of helium, along with olivine, plagioclase, and pyroxene debris, which are all types of igneous rock. Interestingly, there is also a significant amount of brown glass. Oh, so it has a lot of silicon dioxide, which makes sense. It must have been formed by the high temperatures during volcanic eruptions that sintered the silicon dioxide into glass. But what about the helium? Nova nodded and continued. This helium was drawn away from the blue planet by the moon's gravity during a chaotic period in the solar system. The moon's lower temperature allowed the helium to be perfectly preserved within the granular lunar soil. As helium was extracted from the blue planet, oxygen was able to rise, forming the atmosphere crucial for the survival of life on the blue planet. Dongfang pondered, that's fascinating. So, without the moon, there might not be humanity as we know it today? Your reasoning isn't wrong. But who can truly explain the wonders of the universe? Nova replied. Take the planet as an example. It is surrounded by a ring of asteroids. When the planet's system was still in chaos, the asteroids attracted helium, allowing the planet to have a complete atmosphere and thus enabling life. Just as they were conversing, the robots entered the scene. Dongfang paused and directed his gaze toward the area. A uniquely designed machine rolled into the center. It had only one forearm, similar to a crane. Once it reached its destination, it extended its forearm towards the lunar surface. A laser shot out, immediately creating a circular trench about 1 meter in diameter on the ground. After that, it retracted its forearm and proceeded to the next worksite, followed by a machine transporting steel columns. It also raised its forearm, accurately placing the steel column into the trench that had just been dug. The steel column protruded about 2 meters above the ground. The third machine followed, carrying a large tank on its back, with a nozzle extending from its tail, injecting the refined molten steel into the trench. The mobile plasma metal smelting vehicle was recognized by Dongfang as the last machine. It was specially designed for the battlefield, capable of instantly producing desired parts when key components of the mecha were damaged. Naturally, smelting molten steel was a piece of cake for it. The three machines worked together, quickly filling the leveled ground of the starship with steel columns. Next, the ground-laying machine entered, a large device capable of moving on top of the steel columns. At its tail, there was a conveyor belt where robots could place the undulating ground material. The conveyor transported the material to the mechanical arm, which then took over and welded the pieces together with lasers, perfectly covering the steel columns with 4 sections of the undulating ground. After welding, the surface was smooth as a mirror, without affecting the undulating ground at all. Under Dongfang's watchful eye, the entire undulating ground was laid out in less than an hour. Nova, how big is our base this time? It feels like it's far more than 10 square kilometers. That's just your illusion. I can guarantee with my light brain that it's exactly 10 square kilometers. Haha, Dongfang chuckled foolishly while scratching his head. Chapter 139. The first to clear the level, thanks to Fandom F, Yin Yin Yin, and fans of fantasy full armor, to humans. A base measuring 5 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide is indeed quite enormous. However, with the support of geocentric technology, the construction speed of the lunar base is incredibly fast. Moreover, since most of the buildings were dismantled from the underwater base, this further increased the speed of construction. Once the foundation was completed, a large number of machines were deployed for various tasks such as hoisting and building, transforming the entire base into a construction site. Buildings rose from the ground, showcasing the characteristics of the geocentric star. Finally, the protective shield lit up, and after 6 hours, the base construction was fully completed. When Dongfang and Nova entered the base, the protective shield outside flashed white light once again. The lunar base vanished without a trace, and the ground returned to its original desolation and silence. Inside the base, however, it was brightly lit and bustling with activity, as various indoor equipment, daily necessities, and a large number of books were delivered into the buildings by robots. Nova, did you consider that I need oxygen? Dongfang stood at the entrance of the base, having just removed his mask only to put it back on immediately. It seems I didn't. In the underwater setting, the protective shield ionized seawater to produce oxygen. But on the moon, there's no seawater for the shield to ionize. Thus, Nova hadn't taken this into account. Captain, because the base is quite large, the oxygen filling speed is a bit slow. Please wait for 1 minute. As Nova spoke, a thin laser shot out from the top of the starship. A beam struck a vacant area beside the base, creating a hole in the ground. Through the hole, a vast expanse of deep blue was visible. The laser accurately penetrated 50 meters of soil, creating an opening above an underground ice lake. Below lay a boundless expanse of massive ice layers. With the ice layer in place, oxygen was no longer a challenge. A mechanical vehicle descended and then unfolded on the ice, transforming into an oxygen production center. Subsequently, a robot landed and connected pipes to the oxygen output of the production center. A continuous flow of oxygen was immediately sent to the main control center. Captain, you can disengage the mech now. Dongfang pressed a button at his waist, and the liquid metal flowed back into his belt. He took a long breath. Not bad. It has the scent of the sea. Nova chuckled. Of course. This was specially manufactured for you. If it didn't have that scent, it would be strange. Captain, let me introduce you to the base, said Huasu, a graduate of the astronomy department at a prestigious technology university. His resume was unusual. In the section for interests and specialties, he listed gaming and fitness, adding a note that he was particularly skilled at gaming. However, his bluntness had resulted in him being unemployed for 6 months since graduation. During his job search, as soon as employers read his claim of being particularly skilled at gaming, they would invariably shake their heads and politely say they would inform him if there were any updates. After waiting cluelessly for 10 days following his first interview, he had become well-versed in the typical interview routines of companies. So, when he heard yesterday afternoon to wait for a notification, he felt nothing but a moment of exasperation. After returning to his rental apartment and enjoying a protein-rich meal, he fell into a deep sleep. Perhaps he had eaten too much. At 5 a.m., he opened his eyes. After a quick trip to the bathroom, he found it impossible to fall asleep again in the cramped space. Looking up, he spotted the only piece of furniture in the rental apartment, a black helmet on the computer desk. It wasn't something he had purchased. It was a gift from a company, given to him as a lucky internal test player. He had been playing the game Colonization Era for a month and a half. Bathed in the faint light from outside, the unique logo of the company radiated a distinct charm, making the blue planet appear as if it were floating above the desk. Seeing this scene, he could no longer sleep. So he quickly got dressed, grabbed the helmet from the desk, and put it on. Huasu was different from others. He was not just fond of gaming. He had been passionately in love with Interstellar Colonization Era since the day it was released. Besides gaming, his greatest passion was astronomy. Knowledge of astronomy, astronomical instruments, and all the cutting-edge technology of rockets and spaceships fascinated him. However, due to his parents' expectations, he had to study hard and get into a university that others envied. Instead of joining the military, becoming a pilot, or even an astronaut as he wished, he found his greatest joy in gaming. In games, he could pilot planes and soar through the sky. Back to the main topic. Training and theoretical knowledge was a piece of cake for him. He passed all the assessments with full marks, but the toughest challenge was the physical training. As a gaming enthusiast, he naturally lacked physical fitness. However, unexpectedly, through a chance opportunity, he learned the dual training method taught by the physical training instructor. After just one practice session, despite not performing perfectly, the neck pain he had developed from long hours of study significantly eased. And his performance in weighted runs and games improved as well. Realizing the benefits, he started dual training in the mornings and evenings. In just 1 month, he transformed from someone who struggled to run 800 meters into an athletic individual who could easily complete all courses except for isolation training. Today, he was preparing for his third attempt at isolation training. This was the final hurdle before he could reach the moon. Since it was his third attempt, he felt even more relaxed, continually adjusting himself according to the instructor's methods, and successfully navigated through the 20 days of game time. However, in the last 10 days, he, like others, fell into anxiety. He constantly doubted himself, questioned life and society, shouted, banged his head against the wall, and even resorted to self-harm. He tried every possible way to forget the unbearable loneliness. Unfortunately, it was all in vain. Lying on the floor of the isolation room, he stared blankly at the ceiling he was so familiar with that he could recite the number of soft package holes, quietly muttering to himself to give up and try again next time. Just when he felt utterly exhausted and was about to close his eyes and shout, "I give up," the scene of the instructor teaching the dual training method flashed before him. Yes, I can practice too, he thought, jumping up and starting an immersive training session in the isolation room. When tired, he would sleep. When hungry, he would eat. And everything else was training. As long as he could improve his form even a little, he would be delighted for half a day. Thus, he realized that isolation training was essentially just a closed dual training method. 30 days flew by. He heard a notification. All networks announce, "Congratulations to player Hojiri for passing astronaut training." As the first player to pass, the company would reward him with 50,000 RMB. At the same time, congratulatory messages floated before his eyes. Ding dong. Huasu noticed a message coming in. "Hello, Mr. Hua. Our company intends to sign a contract with you, making you our exclusive trial player with an annual salary starting at 500,000. If you are interested, please call our company at 091-168-8888 or email dhjdaiwankam. We look forward to your call or letter from the administrative office of the company." Huasu was stunned. Wow, is this really happening? Chapter 140. Completion. Thanks to the reviewers and supporters. Although Interstellar Colonization Era discouraged 90 of players right from the start, there are still many hardcore players who endure the game's challenges as if it were their first love. Of course, at this moment, they are still swimming in the ocean of theoretical knowledge, temporarily unable to see the shore. Suddenly, congratulations flooded in from all over the internet, and the gamers in the classroom were left in a daze. Among them, the most confused was Sun Jiamo. What the heck? Someone actually passed. Is it really that freak Zhang Hao? No way, I need to get in touch with him quickly. The boss emphasized this specifically. Once someone passes, they must be signed on, regardless of gender. Without caring whether it was appropriate in class, Sun Jiamu quickly logged off. Meanwhile, the other students began to discuss. No way. Who is this freak? Could it be a plant from the company? Are they really giving out RMB rewards for playing? Yeah, probably a plant. I wonder if the second place gets a reward too. It might be real. I heard the company has never done a losing business, except for Colonization Era. No way. I want to be second. I just don't know if that big shot will release a tutorial. I'll search and try adding as a friend. The professor couldn't take it anymore and bellowed, "Everyone, quiet down. This is a classroom, not a marketplace." The student who left midway has a score of 0 in the medical knowledge assessment. The classroom instantly fell silent. Huasu was a bit confused. After receiving the official information from the company, the friend requests kept coming in. The notification sounds were incessant, nearly deafening him. He looked down to see 20,000 friend requests. It wasn't until he turned off the friend request notifications that the bombardment stopped. Exhausted from the isolation training, he just wanted to sleep. So he ignored everything and logged off to rest. "Captain, this is the newly completed metal processing center. Now, the new base has completed all construction tasks according to your plan," Nova said beside Dongfang, giving a comprehensive introduction to the details of the new base. This meant they had settled on the moon. Before Dongfang could finish speaking, the phone rang. "Chairman, the first player to complete the astronaut training assessment in Colonization Era has appeared." Dongfang answered the call, and Sun Jiamu spoke rapidly, barely pausing for breath. "It's incredible. I checked his back-end records. He only took a month." Dongfang patiently waited for him to finish speaking before asking, "Where is he? Have you contacted him?" That's the second thing I wanted to report. His registered address is in the capital, and he graduated from university in 2022. The HR department has contacted him multiple times, but unfortunately, no one has answered the phone. The HR department has been trying to reach him, but I thought it best to report to you first as per your instructions. Continue to try contacting him, and let me know immediately if there is any news." Dongfang arranged a sentence, hung up the phone, and turned to Nova. His name is Huasu, a graduate of a technology university in a certain country. After graduation, He submitted 10 resumes, but is yet to be hired by any company. Currently in a state of unemployment. He lives in a rental house in the suburban area on the west side of the capital. Oh, he is also one of the lucky internal testers selected by our company. In this era of phone and internet, it seems that no one has any secrets. Therefore, with Nova's capabilities, he could even accurately state Huasu's house number. All right, the home is settled. Nothing else. I'll head back to Blue Star, Dongfang said, suddenly feeling a swell of pride. Traveling back and forth between Blue Star and the moon feels like a trip to an amusement park, right? This must be a unique experience. Incredible. After exiting the main control center of the base, Dongfang, accompanied by Nova, arrived at the base's helipad. This time, the vehicle taking Dongfang back to Blue Star was not a shuttle, but a medium-sized shuttle-shaped spacecraft. The battleship is a near-distance battleship within the galaxy, measuring 620 meters in length, with a maximum width of 120 meters. The narrowest part at the bow is 10 meters wide, while the stern is about 50 meters wide. On both sides of the rear are hull thrusters, equipped with built-in anti-gravity engines. The power and propulsion are supplied by a large cold nuclear fusion reactor. The top of the ship features a concealed high-frequency laser cannon, and there are 2 gamma-ray cannons on either side of the hull, while the belly of the ship has an electromagnetic cannon designed for planetary use. The battleship carries 200 bionic robots and 100 second-generation intelligent mechas, enough to ensure safety on Blue Star in case of a global nuclear war. Of course, that is also impossible. I will return to Blue Star after completing the research on the Mayan computer to work with you on desertification. Nova paused. The hatch of the battleship opened, and a beam of light shot out, pulling Dongfang into the spacecraft at the speed of light. Before he reached the bridge, the spacecraft had already taken off. After a brief gathering of force by the hull thruster at the rear, the spacecraft transformed into a beam of light, traveling along the route opened by the starship, entering Blue Star and landing above the desertification base. Dongfang checked his watch. It took 2 minutes and 21 seconds. All right, the previous statement was incorrect. Going to the moon should be about the same duration as a trip to the restroom. Again, a beam of light gently placed him in front of the small villa. Just as Dongfang steadied himself, he heard a sound. What was that? While Dongfang was still a bit confused, another sound came. Hatue, is there an outsider here? I haven't received any reports from the robots. Driven by curiosity, Dongfang took a few steps to the edge of the platform. Wow. He was amused by the sight before him. The white-haired camel was still in the position where it had bumped into the wall that day, and in front of it stood a robot that looked human, standing there in a daze. The little camel was spitting white foam at the robot. When they get angry, they foam at the mouth and spit at their opponent. It's not a sign of illness. The little camel was quite anxious, as this person kept blocking its way, preventing it from finding the human who fed it with milk. If they didn't move aside soon, it would spit in their face. Just when it was gathering enough saliva to spit, a bowl full of delicious milk appeared before its eyes. Where had that been all this time? The little camel looked at the milk while licking it, and cast a resentful glance at the person. It opened its mouth and asked, "Haven't you found your parents?" In the evening news, a game humorously dubbed by netizens as the most bizarre game in history, named Interstellar Colonization Era, had someone finally complete the first phase. The company behind it would reward this player, nicknamed Big Day by netizens, with a cash prize of 50,000 yuan. It seems that nothing is impossible for those who are determined. Even in the most bizarre game, there are players who can complete it quickly. Meanwhile, some students today tend to shy away from challenges. Even playing games poorly is a cause for concern. The online community exploded with excitement. Was this the first time evening news reported on a game? This was also the 5th time the company made it to the evening news. Major media outlets quickly picked up the story, with the first player to complete the bizarre game trending online. Meanwhile, the singer Wong, who recently released a new song, was left in the dust. Chapter 141. Repaying kindness. The trending news sparked enthusiasm among netizens. Many players who had given up early on picked up their helmets again after seeing the promotional event, even if they might never complete the game. Wasn't there someone sharing videos of their travels within the game online? In reality, the pandemic situation in various countries was far from over. Traveling abroad was no longer as simple as before, and the risk of contracting the virus made it not worth the trouble. Thus, the game developed by the company gave rise to a new industry, tourism. Traveling in the game felt just as real as in real life. But it was safer and even offered better scenery. So why spend money to travel in reality? Hello, is this Mr. Huasu? After a refreshing sleep, Huasu woke up energetically and got ready. Just as he put on his only suit and prepared to leave for an interview, the phone rang. A middle-aged man's voice came through. Yes, I am Huasu. How can I help you? Hello, I am Sun Jiamu, the head of the Xiao Yudi game studio, a subsidiary of the company. I believe you've received the email we sent you in the game, right? Yes. Huasu nodded, surprised that such a simple prize required the general manager to contact him personally. He continued nodding as he explained the situation. Are you interested in working with our company? Huasu was stunned. The email was real. Playing a game could lead to a job? An annual salary of 500,000. Are you really hiring me? An annual salary of 500,000? Huasu stammered in disbelief. No, to be precise, the annual salary starts at 500,000. If your work performance is outstanding, 500,000 is just the beginning. Huasu's mouth was wide open, and the suit jacket he was holding slipped from his hands unconsciously. Did he win a big prize? Has he become a lucky person? His lips trembled as he struggled to speak. It's no wonder he was like this. He had faced numerous setbacks over the past 6 months, which had worn him down. The disdainful looks from family, classmates, and friends had left him in this state. Hey, are you still there? On the phone beside him, Sun Jiamu asked uncertainly. The voice jolted him awake. Yes, I'm listening. So what have you decided? Want to give it a try? Is your company located in the southern city? He still had a last bit of hesitation. He wanted to develop his career in the capital. Oh, our company is in the southern city, but the group's address is in Yan'an City, Shan Province. Are you concerned about the work location? Yes. I want to stay in the capital. Our group also has offices in the capital. So you really don't need to worry about the work location. So, I'm supposed to go for an interview in the southern city, right? No, you'll go to the group headquarters. The chairman specifically mentioned it. After Sun Jimu provided the specific address of the group, he hung up the phone. Huasu excitedly picked up the jacket from the ground and tossed it high into the air. Was he about to reach the pinnacle of his life? The first person to land on Mars, Huasu's autobiography. Of course, it was too early to say that. At this moment, he was just a university graduate hustling for a job. After shouting and celebrating for a while, he pretended to be calm and took out his phone to buy a train ticket to Yan'an City. After packing his things, he went out for lunch. Looks like you're starving. Dongfang squatted by the greenhouse, smiling as he watched the little camel devour 3 bowls of milk. The little camel, of course, couldn't speak, but gently nudged Dongfang with its head and stood up. Dongfang also got up and patted its head. Go on. If you're hungry, I'll give you more milk. As if understanding Dongfang's words, the little camel trotted off, running about 50 meters away before turning around and calling out, as if signaling that it was leaving. It wasn't until Dongfang raised his arm and waved that the little camel turned back and trotted away, quickly disappearing into the desert. Dongfang stood in place, brushing off the sand that had gotten on his hands from petting the camel. He then turned and entered the seedling greenhouse. The robots were working at a rapid pace. The first new type seedling greenhouse was already filled with red willow saplings. With the help of life science, the saplings were thriving, so after checking around, Dongfang returned to his small villa. Before he could lie down on the bed, the phone rang. Chairman, as per your instructions, I have already contacted Huasu, and the relevant situation has been reported to Director Wang Tao. Huasu will go for an interview at the group headquarters today. But what? Do we still need to speak so hesitantly among ourselves? He wanted to develop in the capital and did not wish to go to the company headquarters or the southern city. I have other arrangements for him. And the company also has a flagship store in the capital, so it's fine to place his personnel records there. That's what I told him. With your approval, I feel relieved. After the call ended, he began to think about arrangements for Huasu. It wasn't long before he fell into a deep sleep. After all, he hadn't slept all night and was feeling a bit overwhelmed. 8 hours passed in the blink of an eye, and he opened his eyes in bed, awakened by the bionic robot. Your Excellency, the camel that came this morning is here again. The robot's somewhat mechanical voice echoed in his mind. He speculated that the little camel must really be lost from its parents. Otherwise, it wouldn't keep returning to the greenhouse. Before he even reached the greenhouse, the little camel spotted him. It seemed a bit happy, grinning as it quickly ran up to him. It didn't like the robots at all because they lacked a human touch. He stood still, and when it reached him, he reached out to touch its exceptionally soft fur, then placed his hand on its head. Little buddy, are you hungry again? He pulled out a milk box from behind and shook it. However, he miscalculated. The little camel didn't pay attention to the milk box. Instead, it bit the corner of his clothes and tugged at him to move. Oh, where do you want to take me? He didn't resist and followed the camel's lead. The camel, aptly nicknamed the ship of the desert, was quick. After leaving the well-prepared sand control base, he found it hard to keep up with the little camel. He walked unevenly, 1 foot deep and the other shallow, while the little camel kept stopping to look back and wait for him. Only when he caught up did it continue moving forward. After walking together for a good 30 minutes, the little camel finally stopped. He turned to look back. They weren't far from the rented sandy area, and he could still vaguely see the greenhouse. The little camel bleated and began to dig in the sand with its front hooves. He smiled slightly, crouched down, and helped it dig. After a few moments, his hand hit something hard. Without thinking much, he reached out and pulled it out. It was very hard and cool, and the part he touched felt exceptionally smooth. However, since it was covered in wet sand, he couldn't tell what it was. It felt like a book. After he retrieved the object, The little camel stopped digging and nudged him with its head, grinning to reveal its white teeth. There was no doubt. This was the gift the little camel wanted to give him. Chapter 142. Global Live Broadcast. The sand seemed to have covered the object for a long time, and the outer layer of sand must have just gotten on it. He gently rubbed it a few times, revealing something wrapped in mud, with a hole apparently dug out in the middle. When he looked closer, it appeared to have been gnawed open by the little camel's teeth. Inside was something milky white, which was the spot he had touched. Following that, he peeled away the outer mud shell a few times. A piece of jade measuring about 25 centimeters long, 10 centimeters wide, and 3 centimeters thick was revealed. The biological chip in his mind immediately made a preliminary judgment based on the observation. It was top-quality mutton fat white jade. It was adorned with numerous patterns on both the front and back. The four corners of the jade were engraved with the four divine beasts, the azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise, which were connected by cloud patterns, wind and thunder patterns, flowing water patterns, and fire patterns. The sides of the jade were covered with a pattern resembling a continuous knot, while the back featured a lotus pattern, somewhat similar to that of a certain ancient civilization. In the blank space in the middle, 3 ancient seal characters were carved, and to the left of the last character was a small decorative motif, a deer pattern. The biological computer displayed a note, Jade Slip. Is this a book? The individual held the jade slab and frowned. He flipped it over and over but found no place to open it, and it was evidently just a slab of jade, with no mechanisms or structures. But why would the ancients engrave the words Jade Slip? Perhaps this is a product of modern imagination? Standing at the edge of the sand pit, he fell into contemplation. Suddenly, he felt something tugging at the corner of his clothing. Looking down, he realized it was the little camel, anxious, tugging at him again with its mouth. He smiled, wondering what he was lost in thought about. If he went back and checked, wouldn't he know everything? With that thought, he put away the jade slab and reached out to pat the little camel's head. Let's go back. The little camel immediately led the way. He didn't want to waste any more time and waved his hand. A battleship above shot out a beam of light, pulling the laughing individual and the little camel into the cabin. In less than 30 seconds, he was back in front of the small villa. The little camel was still standing beside him, looking a bit shaken. Don't be afraid. After the robot presented a milk bowl specifically for the little camel, he stroked its head to reassure it. Soon, it quieted down and started licking the milk. Captain, this is just an ordinary jade slab. According to Carbon-14 dating, it dates back about 2,200 to 2,400 years, belonging to the Warring States period. Its patterns are exquisite, far exceeding the technological level of that time. But that's all it is. Nonetheless, it is a nice antique and can be part of your collection. With Nova's voice, the battleship's beam of light delivered the jade slab to his hand. He gently caught it. All right. The lotus pattern on the back does resemble that of a certain ancient civilization, but with slight differences. Perhaps the creator encountered people from that civilization. Just like the previous speculation, Nova's voice rang out again, explaining the lotus pattern on the back. He had no more doubts, placing the jade slab on his bookshelf. It could be considered his first collectible, but he had to reward the little camel, which knew how to show gratitude. Today's milk would be that expensive, pure kind. Huasu was standing idly by the roadside outside Yan'an railway station. He had already contacted the administrative office of a certain group, and the car to pick him up should be arriving soon. He was somewhat surprised that such a large conglomerate would still want to recruit someone like him, who hadn't even started working yet. After unsuccessfully trying to decline, he had no choice but to accept the goodwill from the little things done by the group. He felt sincerity and importance. He had basically made up his mind about this company. If the annual salary could really reach over 500,000, then working outside the capital city wouldn't be an issue. He heard that the benefits at this group were very good, including housing allocation. Just as he was distractedly calculating, a black SUV from the group stopped by the roadside. A young man in a Zhongshan suit got out from the passenger seat. Hello, are you Mr. Huasu? Yes. Are you from the group? I'm Gao Fei from the administrative office of the group. Director Wang Tao sent me to pick you up. After shaking hands, they both got into the car and headed towards the group. 40 minutes later, Huasu arrived at the group's headquarters. He got out of the car in front of the building. Turning to glance at the group, he noticed that, since it was winter, the flowers and trees along the road were all withered. However, it didn't look like a manufacturing company at all. The air within the company grounds was exceptionally fresh. Huasu nodded. The achievements in environmental protection could best reflect how strong a company was. So from this perspective, the strength of the group was beyond doubt. Mr. Hua, this way please. Gao Fei gestured to lead the way. Inside a small meeting room, Wang Tao was already waiting. Mr. Huasu, thank you for waiting. Please take a seat. Wang Tao had a strong presence. Huasu sat down somewhat meekly across from him. Hello, Director Wang. Wang Tao laughed heartily and relaxed. It's just a simple chat. All right, please go ahead. As they spoke, an office clerk brought in tea, and Huasu picked it up. Behind the rising steam of the tea, he finally regained his composure. It's quite simple. What are your thoughts on streamers? We are in the era of the internet economy, and as the saying goes, the times create heroes. Today, as internet celebrities have immense influence. One of them can even support a company with hundreds of employees, truly the kings of sales. Moreover, there are various types. From gaming streamers to food broadcasters and beauty influencers, a mix of quality and standards. If product oversight is not strict, these sales streamers can easily be criticized and permanently banned. So, I think being a streamer is just a profession. Huasu spoke confidently, with clear reasoning, analyzing the pros and cons of streamers quite thoroughly. If you were to be a streamer, would you be willing? There are no restrictions on the work location. You can choose any city you like. Is this the era of live streaming colonization? I would be willing, but Huasu felt a bit shy about discussing salary, as he was not good at it. An annual salary of 650,000, but you cannot accept any advertising contracts. The company will take 20 of the tips, and you will take 80. You will be a formal employee of the company, affiliated with the flagship store. And being a streamer is just temporary. There will be other arrangements later. The contract is for 10 years. The annual salary will increase by at least 3 each year. With such great conditions, what more could Huasu want? Sign it. That evening, the official website of the Earth Ring Group announced a major piece of news. Tonight at 8 p.m., the Earth Ring Company's livestream will globally broadcast the moon landing of the interstellar colonization era. The Earth Ring Company once again topped the trending searches. In the midst of planting trees, Dongfang received a call from Su Lei. Dongfang, it's been a while since we last contacted. How realistic can the simulation of this moon landing game get? Dongfang chuckled, putting down the sapling and standing up. Su Ge, long time no see. Our game's simulation accuracy is over 95. That's so high? Is that almost the same as the real thing? Before Dongfang could finish his sentence, Su Lei anxiously interrupted him, urgently asking his concerns. Don't rush. This ratio refers to the internal conditions on Blue Star. If we can achieve 50 on the moon, that would be quite good, possibly even lower. After all, no one has been up there, right? Su Lei was also anxious. Upon hearing Dongfang's explanation, he quickly realized. Being a soldier, it's understandable that you're not into scientific research or technology. 50 simulation accuracy is still impressive. Our country intends to send 4 people to play this moon landing game with your game challengers. Of course, they are officially trained astronauts who have completed all the training and gone through rigorous selection. Dongfang felt pleased. Not only could Su Lei take the blame, but he was also skilled at providing timely assistance. I have no problem with that. It's just that the moon landing will be a game live stream, and the official website has already warmed up for it. There shouldn't be any objections from above, right? Haha, this is a great morale booster for the whole nation. Of course, there are no objections. Even if there were, they wouldn't contact you. But is there any technical difficulty? They can't appear in their original forms. That is fine. It's technically manageable. As long as we introduce them to the audience as intelligent AIs, the appearance isn't an issue. This isn't a military procurement for real combat simulation. It has the function of adjusting appearances. That is good. Let them log on early at 7 p.m. tonight. I'll handle it. Dongfang hung up and returned to planting trees. Such a simple task was just a thought away for Nova. That night at 7:50 p.m., the Earth Ring Group's livestream room already had over 1 million viewers entered. Although the livestream hadn't started yet, the onlookers were already excited. Dongfang quietly opened his phone, comfortably settled into a lounge chair, seemingly closing his eyes to prepare for rest. But the grin on his face indicated he wasn't really sleepy at all. In reality, he wasn't sleeping. He was sneakily peeking at the livestream using the biological computer in his mind. This was why he appeared somewhat strange to others in that moment. A relative of an Earth Ring Company staff member remarked, "What did I say? The sun hasn't been created yet, but we'll shoot for the moon first. This is our national enterprise. This time, we're really going to reach for the stars." Another commented, "You, an outsider, know nothing. The sun is still being created. And our company is set to recreate the magnificent scene of the 9 suns in the sky. Hurry up and buy sunscreen, or you'll end up getting tanned." Bystander, what is the point? First, find Chang'e before anything else. Your teacher is missing the main point. I just wonder if Wu Gang is still around. Let him chop down a couple of laurel trees for us. Bystander, Chang'e is better. I want to ask her if she feels lonely on the moon. If only I could turn into a little rabbit. You might as well change your name to Rabbit A. Supporting the one above. Everyone support. Let us all support together. Ha ha ha. Dongfang is laughing so hard that his stomach is starting to cramp, hitting the armrest of his chair and wiping away tears of laughter. Suddenly, the live stream lit up and Huasu appeared on the screen. Dongfang glanced at the time, 8 o'clock sharp. Hello everyone. I'm Huajiri, yes. The first player online to complete the astronaut training in the colonial era. I believe everyone is concerned about the prize money. Haha, it has already been credited. Since it's his first time speaking in front of over 1 million people, he was quite nervous, but he managed to get through it, albeit with some stumbles. Of course, he pretended not to see the comments from netizens that were flooding the screen. Without further ado, let us jump straight into the game. Hwosu didn't dare to look at the screen again, not knowing what else they might say. He stood up and put on his helmet. The live stream shifted, transforming into the landing screen of the colonial era. In fact, a significant portion of the audience had never played this game before. As the opening animation appeared, someone immediately flooded the screen with comments. Bystander. Isn't this CG amazing? Are our country's game companies this impressive too? You're quite out of touch. I've actually played it before, and that scene was hilarious. Hwosu had no idea about this. After logging into the game, he found himself at the entrance of the Isolation Training Center. Just as he was about to step back into the center, a girl called out to him. Excuse me, are you Mr. Hwajiri? He stopped and turned, nodding in acknowledgement. You have completed all training modules. Please proceed to the main control center of the base. Here is your identification. Hwosu took the company ID from the Earthring Aerospace, which had some embossed gold lettering on the outside. Opening it, he saw the personal information of his game character, with an image of the character's likeness on the top right corner. While Hwosu was looking down at the ID, the NPC continued speaking. On the morning of the day after tomorrow at 10 o'clock a.m., we will launch the FAT-9 lunar spacecraft from the Earth Ring launch base. Please be there on time. Hwosu nodded and returned to the lounge assigned to him in the game. The game screen dimmed. The onlookers went crazy again. What the heck is this live stream? Are we streaming sleep? Even if it's a sleep stream, let us see the person. Support the one on top. Support 1. Support 10,000. I weekly say. This game's animation transition is going to be quick. Get out of here. We want to see right now? In the live stream, the atmosphere was heated as everyone was eager to confront the environmental company about the launch of the FAT-9 rocket. Suddenly, the screen lit up again, and Mr. Hwajiri appeared in the live stream, just as he had taken his position at the entrance of the training center. An all-terrain SUV from the company was parked at the entrance, and he was invited inside. Soon, the vehicle arrived at the office building of the launch base. Along with him were 4 other vehicles. 5 people got out of the cars simultaneously, and Hwosu realized these were the 4 individuals the company had notified him about. He stepped forward to greet them and shook hands. Damn it, what else with the NPC vibe? It feels like a spaceship, he thought. Yeah, stop shaking hands so randomly. Sule watched this scene with a dark expression, muttering, you guys don't know anything. Just wait until the country's FAT-9 really launches, and I'll throw it back in your faces. After some small talk, Hwosu and the others entered the changing room, and the camera shifted to a close-up of the FAT-9 rocket. The audience was thrilled. Hey, this is the first time we're seeing the rocket up close, right? It looks just like a real rocket. I can't believe we got to see the FAT-9 before it even launched in the game. Just look at that sexy body and those 5 charming little booster rockets. I can't take it anymore. Once Hwajiri, Zhang San, Li Si, Wang Wu, and Chun Lu exited the changing room, the system helpfully labeled their names on their helmets for the audience to easily identify them. Come on, this is so lazy. What are these NPCs called? Haha, just call them Dynasty and Mayhan. Quiet, we're watching a live broadcast. They were fully equipped, standing at the entrance of the changing room, each holding a helmet, and they awkwardly made their way downstairs. They were then transported by a shuttle to the launch tower. I bet they LL have to climb up the launch tower. I'm betting 666 as the stake. You're dreaming. They LL definitely fly up. You guys are just complaining that the author is too slow. Why not send a big shot to verify it? Wearing aviation suits that weighed 120 pounds made it impossible for them to climb, let alone fly. Thus, a high-altitude work vehicle was parked beside them to safely transport them to the spacecraft's hatch. They entered the Tianqing No. 1 spacecraft one by one. Unlike previous spacecraft, Tianqing No. 1 was considered a large spacecraft. Inside the cabin, 5 seats were arranged in a circle, surrounded by various instruments and buttons. Hwosu was the last to enter. After securing the hatch, he settled into his seat and called the control center, reporting, "The astronaut is ready and on standby." After finishing his report, he awkwardly glanced at the 4 people beside him. The space is still too small. He can even see the remnants of a recent shave on Zhang San's face. However, Zhang San and his companions don't feel awkward at all. They train together all day long and are as familiar with each other as can be. Brother San, I think this spacecraft is no different from what we used during our training, Chun Lu remarked. What nonsense are you talking about? You think playing games can silence you? Zhang San interrupted Chun Lu, realizing that such comments shouldn't be made with over 1 million viewers watching. Of course, they had no idea that the number of live stream viewers had already surpassed 5 million. If they knew, Zhang San and his friends would surely give the youngest Chun Lu a thorough lesson in physical training. Fortunately, their conversation didn't appear on the live stream. After Zhang San initiated the conversation, Dongfang quickly instructed Nova to switch the camera to the control center. Otherwise, if this information leaked out, it wouldn't just be a matter of a physical training lesson. Chen Lu's astronaut career might very well come to an abrupt end. Report: voltage, radio transmission, power system, propulsion system, link system, and control system have completed self-checks. All systems are in good condition, fuel injection completed, ready for launch. In the control center, a large display covering an entire wall constantly flashed the results of the spacecraft's various system checks. A middle-aged man, who bore an 89 resemblance to Sun Jimu and was wearing a work uniform emblazoned with the logo of the organization, stood beneath the display. At the Xiaoyu company, Sun Jimu sat in front of his computer, shouting excitedly, "Haha, it's finally my turn to take the stage. If I can't land on the moon, I still can't let you guys do it." Just another one of his quirky antics. The man glanced at his watch. It was exactly 1,000 hours. "We can launch." Everyone in the control room began to get busy. They prepared for the lunar launch, retracting the fuel and liquid oxygen lines, with ignition set for 10 seconds later. The speakers immediately began announcing the situation. As the camera shifted again, the rocket's nozzle became the center of attention, with the fuel lines retracting automatically. The clamps on the launch tower released one by one. 321. Ignition. A large plume of white steam billowed from the tail of the rocket, and a thick flame erupted from the engine nozzle. The camera zoomed out, and Fat 9 slowly lifted off the ground. At that moment, majestic background music echoed in the live stream, and the barrage of comments temporarily ceased. Everyone was captivated by Fat 9's ascent. Soon, the live stream screen was filled with flying gifts. Aboard Principal Wang sent 99 rockets, while Jia Tianbang's Emperor sent 66,630. Just over 100 seconds later, Fat 9 reached an altitude of 70 kilometers, and the booster rockets prepared to detach. The 5 small rockets alongside Fat 9 fell away sequentially, and the central nozzle ignited, propelling the rocket skyward at an even higher speed. "Brother San, have you flown before?" Huasu quickly asked as the vibrations from the spacecraft eased. "No, like you. It's our first time," Zhang San replied. His training had been more rigorous, so under these conditions, he spoke a bit slowly, but he was certainly not affected by the vibrations. "I can't help but feel that this is no different from reality." The remaining few are silent, sharing the same sentiment. Is this game really that amazing? It can completely simulate the experience of a rocket launch at an altitude of 182 kilometers. With a speed of 68 kilometers per second, the first stage rocket shuts down and separates, while the second stage ignites. We are about to enter a 16-hour orbit around the blue planet. The second stage rocket shuts down, reaching the designated orbit. All departments, maintain communication. Hello, everyone. I am Hoijiri, and I am currently located 1,000 kilometers above the surface of the blue planet, in orbit. You see, I can already fly. Huasu unbuckled his seatbelt and gently pushed against the handrail, floating up effortlessly. This is so much fun. He bumped into the top of the spacecraft, hit his head, and fell back down. This is the first time in the live broadcast history of the blue planet. The game feels just like a real-life experience. And the live broadcast is of a moon landing. Another wave of rockets, amazing, taking off. Dongfang roughly calculated that in just 1 hour, he had sent virtual gifts worth at least 300,000. Who would have thought that making money could be this easy? And as the number of viewers continues to increase, this figure is rising at a visibly rapid pace. By the end of the night, wouldn't he earn a year's salary? No. Let Nova take back a portion for now and give it to Huasu later. Otherwise, if he sees how much money the streamer is making, he might just bail halfway through. Passerby. Hey, why isn't the screen showing the gifts I sent? Chapter 145, Sandstorm. It would be strange if he could see it. Everything was quietly blocked by Nova. Once they stopped worrying about the gifts, the Fat 9 spacecraft had already completed its trajectory change and was heading towards the moon. Hello everyone, I just demonstrated a state of zero gravity, and now everyone seems a bit thirsty. Let me have a sip of water. Huasu landed back in his seat and took out a tube of toothpaste from the storage box behind him. Unlike on the blue planet, here is how you drink water. Huasu squeezed the bottom of the toothpaste tube, and a water ball floated in the air, clear and shimmering as it wobbled. He puckered his lips and gently sucked, pulling the water ball into his mouth. Ah, it tastes great. Huasu smacked his lips and said. Meanwhile, the 4 people next to him had all flipped their seats and were operating the instruments on the spacecraft. We are about to enter the lunar orbit. Check the status of all systems, and prepare to ignite the second stage rocket engine to decelerate. After reaching the designated orbit, Zhang San, as the commander, issued the order. In fact, the game's original speed was much slower, but Dongfang adjusted it for the sake of the broadcast. Nova quietly deleted some content to meet the live streaming requirements while keeping it engaging for the audience. Otherwise, according to the technological level of the blue planet, broadcasting a 10-day flight would not attract viewers, even if Huasu showcased all his tricks. Moreover, Zhang San and the others had tasks to complete, so they naturally couldn't let the audience see everything. Under the coordination of the 5 members, the spacecraft has reached the designated landing site. The second stage rocket ignited and detached from the lunar orbit. Zhang San issued the command again. The remaining 4 responded in unison, and the actions of the operator became even quicker. The second stage rocket of the spacecraft ignited, and the 5 flew straight towards the moon. Li Si reported a height of 1,000 kilometers and a speed of 5 kilometers per second. Zhang San, adjust the rocket's attitude. Li Si, height 800 kilometers. Wang Wu, the second stage rocket engine is ready. Zhang San, ignite in 5 seconds. 5-4-3-2-1 ignited. The engine status is normal and is decelerating. Huasu reported with a serious expression. The current speed of the spacecraft is 48 kilometers per second, then 47 kilometers per second. As reports continued to come from the cabin, the rocket gradually approached the moon. Height 200 meters. Wang Wu, restart the engine, prepare for landing. Zhang San. In the live broadcast room, everyone stopped chatting and quietly watched this astonishing scene. 5 meters, 3 meters, 1 meter. Safe landing. Just as Huasu shouted this, the screen suddenly split in two, one half showing the main control hall of the launch base, and the other half showing the interior of the spacecraft. The control center erupted in warm applause, while the 5 inside the cabin embraced each other and cheered loudly. Everyone's eyes were red, and they repeatedly shouted, "We did it! We succeeded!" The live chat room also exploded, as viewers felt they were witnessing a historic moment. As the dust settled, the silhouette of the spacecraft reappeared, piercing the sky like a sword. They lowered the support, checked the spacesuit conditions, and prepared for landing. After completing the celebration, Zhang San spoke up. Yes. Then the spacecraft door was pushed open, and a ladder extended down. It landed steadily on the ground. Huasu was the last to enter, so he was the first to stand up and walk down the ladder. The camera panned down to focus on his feet. Huasu stood firmly on the lunar surface. He then lifted his foot, ready to take a few steps to make room for the others behind him. Suddenly, Huasu floated lightly like a balloon, landing about 2 meters away from the spacecraft. Sorry, I forgot the gravity here is only 1/6 of that on Earth. Haha. Huasu explained awkwardly and then began to bounce around like Dongfang. Although he didn't bounce as high as Dongfang, he still enjoyed it immensely. The audience exclaimed, "What did I just see? Huajiri's small step is a giant leap for mankind." The onlookers commented, "Wake up, this is a game." An elder from the group shouted, "Get lost. What's the difference with reality?" Phantom F. Onlookers, do you understand virtual reality games? If not, go back and get reborn. The second one to come down was Zhang San, holding a red flag. If it weren't for the helmet, the viewers in the live room would definitely notice that he was already in tears. This has been his lifelong dream. He could reach for the moon above and catch turtles in the ocean below. He trembled as he stretched out his hand and planted the small red flag on the lunar surface. At that moment, Huasu also landed next to the flag, and the 5 of them stood tall beside it. In unison, they began to sing the national anthem, Arise. After the song ended, the scene froze and gradually faded to black. Today's live stream comes to an end. Everyone, don't miss it tomorrow at 8 p.m. What the heck? Even live streams do this now. Huajiri, come out quickly, or I'll shoot you down. The viewers in the live chat were reluctant to leave, continuing to chat and joke around. Dongfang opened his eyes and sat up from the lounge chair. He was very satisfied. Today's live stream was a great success, and he believed more people would come to play this game. The astronaut training was finally getting on track. It seems the speed of desertification control needs to be accelerated. I wonder how Nova's research is going. Dongfang brewed himself a cup of tea and lay in the bathtub, muttering, "Nova, are you there?" "Captain, I'm always here." "What's the progress on the Mayan civilization?" "At your pace, there should be some results, but further verification is needed." "Oh, really? Show me what you have." Dongfang changed positions in the bathtub, closed his eyes, and prepared to carefully examine Nova's findings. "Please hold on. I need to organize my thoughts." Nova agreed, but she frowned beautifully. "Oh." Dongfang sat up straight. "This is a bit different from usual. Nova has always appeared to be in full control, but today is unusual." Suddenly, Dongfang heard a sound coming from outside the window. "What's going on?" He stood up, completely naked, and looked outside. What he saw immediately drenched him in cold sweat. A strong wind was blowing across the desert, and at the end of the sky, there was a mass of clouds. The wind kept whipping up sand, which pelted against the protective shield, making a rustling sound. This was the sound Dongfang had just heard. Number 1. Has the little camel returned? Dongfang glanced at the time and felt a chill down his spine. Recently, the little camel always left during the day and returned around dusk. Report, Captain. It has not been found at the base. Damn it. Deploy the drones and bionic robots to search. Dongfang cursed and rushed out the door. Chapter 146, Ancient Tomb? As soon as he stepped outside the protective shield, Dongfang felt the force of the wind. He tried hard to move forward, but the immense power pushed him back. and the soft sand beneath his feet offered no support. He exerted all his strength, but barely moved a few meters, instead sinking deeper into the sand. Dongfang stopped, wiped the sand off his face, and looked up towards the horizon. What the heck? Dongfang saw a sand wall forming where the clouds were, rushing towards him like a tidal wave. Although it was still far away, the overwhelming force that seemed to devour everything was already palpable to Dongfang standing by the protective shield. The sand wall moved swiftly, completely blocking the setting sun, with not a single ray of light penetrating through. Evening turned into night. The sandstorm was too powerful to be resisted by mere flesh and blood. Realizing this, he stopped moving forward, turned around, and quickly entered the protective shield.